Gaming news today is all about corporate pushback. First, Game Pass is in the crosshairs once again as more folks in the gaming industry are opening up with their criticisms about it, and a new development from how Microsoft and Xbox view the profitability of the subservice. It's sort of raising some eyebrows, and even just this morning, we have more clarification on what was stated. Second, stopkillinggames is seeing more pushback, and this time it's from corporate lobbyists who are specifically taking issue with the potential expenses of certain aspects of game preservation. And as always, I've got a game for your wish list and your radar. Now, if you enjoy this talk show and you listen to this regularly, if you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, you're watching on Purple or YouTube, the ongoing support of this channel comes directly from you. So if you're watching on YouTube, consider clicking join and hit Member Plus. It's $6 a month. You get into a daily green room segment. You get to see behind the scenes how we plan the shows, how the content comes to life. And if you're watching on Purple and you decide to use your Prime or any of your other means of support, you will not be seeing ads. So, and also if you're hanging out and people do those gifted members, join in and get those trains going, as one is already starting right now. So let's just jump right into this with the Game Pass criticism. I don't have B-roll for you. We are going to be looking at a tweet where Chris Dring has clarified some of his statements. I feel like it's a bit of a red herring. It feels very on brand for Microsoft, so we're going to look at it. But Xbox cannot seem to catch a break. The gauntlet of criticism lobbied at the brand, the fourth round of layoffs in 18 months, has sort of emboldened more devs and others to start speaking out about the company, the layoffs, as well as Game Pass. And some have even inquired about the viability of the subservice long term. Over the years, many of us have inquired about this. Just how profitable can a subservice be when there are such exorbitant costs to get third-party game deals, as well as the production costs of all the first-party studios? Well, apparently, Xbox does not include the cost of their first-party studios in the equation, which is not actually surprising to a certain degree. There was an FTC email that unveiled. Phil Spencer said, we don't really have an Excel sheet for this. Like, we don't really know how to measure a single game's impact on Game Pass. It's sort of a combination of things, he said. But Chris Dring, formerly of GameIndustry.biz, and now the editor-in-chief and the co-founder of The Game Business, said that he reached out to Microsoft about this given topic, and Game Pass was sort of heating up. And he said the following, quote, I asked for clarification on the Game Pass is profitable claim and was told no first-party costs are included. Now, I really want you to remember that, because his clarification speaks to this not at all. Nothing is said about first-party costs. This is what got everybody's attention, okay, because this is a little baffling. You know, to say something's profitable, but then to be like, but we're not including one of the biggest operational costs of the equation. Well, of course, you're sort of cooking the books. You can say you're profitable and not include one of the main things that you spend your money on. And that would be very misleading. Like, if you said this to shareholders, you're like, yeah, our business is doing very well. Here's our profit margins. And you basically don't tell them that you don't include all your operational costs in the equation. Now, if you especially consider this, the cost to make every single game is not included even a fraction, like, because they do ship the games in other places. But the also loss of potential sales is something that you would see hurting the profitability of this as well, which is probably historically why Activision was avoiding putting the games on Game Pass. And if you doubt Chris Dring and what he said, notable insider Ecstasis corroborated these claims, saying that he has documents and the information is 100% correct, that they do not include the cost to build these games in the Game Pass equation. Game Pass. So Sneaker, another insider, recently talked about how Game Pass has really high churn rate, and it makes it difficult to see growth. He said the following on NeoGAF. He said the last time it got anything even resembling a bump was when Call of Duty launched last year, but Game Pass has an absurdly high churn rate, so that eventually just settled out. Now, Chris Dring posted an update just this morning on the situation. It's rather lengthy. Here it is. I'm going to pull out the most notable parts. The first being this opening little paragraph. He says, okay, I need to correct or clarify something. First, Xbox Game Pass is profitable. even when you factor in the lost sales for its first-party teams. Sources who would know have told me. Now, if you carefully read this, this feels like another Xbox mirage. He did not say anything about dev costs. That was what the original statement was that set the world on fire. It was like, oh, well, you guys have been claiming Game Pass is profitable this whole time, and you don't include the costs of the first-party games. He clarifies and says, well, it is profitable even if you include lost sales. That was not what the discussion was about. So this is not a clarification on what he originally said. This is a red herring. We're going off into a completely separate category that doesn't really apply. Yes, lost sales is a factor, but that's not what got everybody's attention. Here's what he says further down in the next paragraph. He says, over 18 months ago, I checked with Xbox about what's included in Game Pass P&L, profit and loss. Basically, I was looking to see if Game Pass costs factor in the impact to unit sales of their internal studios. I was told that first-party games have their own profit and loss separate to Game Pass as they make money via other means. I'm going to stop right there, okay? So what this does is this supports his original statement, okay? This supports the original statement that he said that got everybody's attention. They have their own profit and loss. It's completely separate than Game Pass. They do not include any of that when they calculate Game Pass. So this right here supports his original statement that, listen, it's not even included. He goes on to say, I felt this piece of internal accountancy might mean Game Pass is profitable, but it sure does put pressure on the margins of the internal games and possibly means game studios don't make as much profit or any profit at all. Now, do you see the problem here? You're using first-party games to increase Game Pass's value, but then you give them their own profit and loss separate from Game Pass, okay? This is probably related to why we heard from an insider that they weren't happy with the sales of Hi-Fi Rush, and then they were willing to close the studio down. This measurement of game success, in my opinion, is stupid. You have 20 to 30 million people on Game Pass, and you're not including that in the profit and loss of a game that's going to sell less, and the cost of that game is not calculated in the potential operational cost of Game Pass. This is, as I said, this is basically cooking the books. You're padding Game Pass with great value, and you're not actually calculating the cost to do that. He concludes his tweet, if we go down further here, and he says this. Oh, we don't need to include the Tony Hawk part. He's enjoying Tony Hawk. He says, but regardless to all that, sources have reached out to tell me that even when you include lost revenue associated with first-party games, not just unit sales but microtransactions, Game Pass is still profitable, so that's great. Do you notice what happened here? Do you notice? It's familiar, isn't it? It's very familiar. Sources reached out to him in the wake of this situation. You know what this sounds like? This sounds like when Phil Spencer did the same thing. A CFO says, we're going to start putting our first-party games on PlayStation and Nintendo, and Phil Spencer says, we have no plans to put Game Pass on PlayStation and Nintendo. It's a red herring. So we once again have Microsoft sources or spokespersons or somebody reaching out to Chris Dring to say, hey, you just told everybody that Game Pass is profitable because we don't include the actual costs of the games to develop. We want to clarify that even if you include lost sales, it's still profitable. That doesn't answer the question. That doesn't clarify what Dring said. It's a red herring. This has nothing to do with his original statement. The reason this got so much attention, it was a tweet reply, by the way. He didn't publish an article. It wasn't some clickbait scathing headline. He posted a reply to somebody and said this. And it got everybody's attention because it said, wait, for the longest time we've been hearing that Game Pass is somehow profitable, and many of us said, how is that even possible? It seems like a loss lead. It seems like something that you're willing to lose money on by spending large amounts of money to produce games, enter into contracts with third-party companies in order to create this value front door for your brand. That's what it always felt like to the rest of us. Well, apparently it is. Because if you included the production costs of these games to any degree, it would basically make it not profitable. So I really want you to track with what has happened here. Xbox does not include the cost of a game in calculating Game Pass profitability. They'll put a game like Call of Duty on the subservice, which ends up not having long-term impact on growth due to the absurdly high churn rates. Meaning, you have a rotating door of people that are consuming games that are very expensive to make, and you're making less money on those games accordingly, and you're not including the cost to make those games in the equation to measure whether or not this is a profitable endeavor. As I said, this just feels like cooking the books. Now, Sneaker went on in his very long post on NeoGAF and said that the actual value of Game Pass is going to go down in the coming years. He essentially speculated that this little window of time we're in right now, where the cadence of Xbox Studio games is so good, that's not going to last. They're losing studios, they're losing property, they're canceling projects. That will inevitably make Game Pass less valuable in the future because they won't be able to maintain that cadence, which leads myself, as well as it seemed that Sneakers was speculating that Game Pass will be continued to be deprioritized, and also it'll have to look very different because if future Xbox hardware is a Windows gaming device, are you going to convert all the people that buy that new device to PC Game Pass because PC Game Pass is cheaper and it still gets day and date? There's a lot of logistical things here that are going to have to happen when these changes take place. It seems as though the entirety of Xbox's business plans and Game Pass are up to scrutiny right now because more and more game devs feel emboldened to speak out against Xbox and Microsoft due to massive layoffs, studio closures, canceling games, and their business structure and practices may have played a significant role here. That's the real big takeaway, is that their Game Pass gamble seems to have not paid off. And now we're hearing, well, they don't even include the cost of all these crazy budgets of these games in the equation of Game Pass. And the clarification is that, well, it's still profitable even if you include lost sales. Don't fall for the red herring. This is not the first time that Microsoft and Xbox has done this, and it certainly will not be the last. Okay? So that's that. That's that story. I got to pull up something else here now so that you guys can get an update on Stop Killing Games. Now, they're facing another obstacle, and this time it is a corporate lobbyist group. A statement from the lobbying group Video Games Europe was posted in response to the movement. They got over 1 million signatures. You can see here 1.2 million. Now, Ross has continued to update his YouTube channel and has continued to tell people, if you are a European citizen and you are able to sign the petition, keep signing. A very high number of these could be rejected as illegitimate signatures, right? People signing that maybe are not citizens, bots, things like that. So if you are interested in seeing this be successful, you really want to push the signatures higher than they currently are. Give as much legitimate padding as you can. Don't go over there and do fake things like that. You're not helping the movement when you do that. Now, this lobbying group is taking issue with the cost associated with some of the aspects of the movement, and here is what they said. They said, "We appreciate the passion of our community. However, the decision to discontinue online services is multifaceted. It's never taken lightly, and it must be an option for companies when an online experience is no longer commercially viable. We understand that it can be disappointing for players, but when it does happen, the industry ensures that players are given fair notice of the prospective changes in compliance with the local consumer protection laws." Now, obviously, this isn't really speaking to the initiative's request. Ross and nobody that's been signing this has said, you need to leave your games on for forever. That would be a ludicrous request. Nobody could ask that of a company because where's the money going to come from to fund, perpetual, eternal games, okay? The request has always been, give us a version of the game in its final form that can be run on private servers so the game is, in some capacity, it is retained for people who paid for it. It is preserved in some way. Now, this lobbying group spoke to private servers and said the following: private servers are not always a viable alternative option for players, as the protection we put in place to secure players' data, remove illegal content, and combat unsafe community content would not exist and would leave rights holders liable. No, that's stupid, but we're going to keep reading. In addition, many titles are designed from the ground up to be online only. In effect, these proposals would curtail developer choice by making these video games prohibitively expensive to create. I'll get to the second part in a moment. And Ross has already responded to this. He said a lot of what I'm going to say, okay? The bit about the company being liable, that is an absolute red herring, okay? Because companies could literally put it in their terms of service that we are not liable for anything that you engage with that is not on official servers. So even if right now you go play a game that has private servers and someone does something, you're basically taking risk when you go into that private server. I would imagine the terms of service protect the company from liability. And if it doesn't, I mean, you could easily do it again when you switch this game into end of life, and you're going to say, hey, we got to put everything into private servers for you guys. You would say, listen, the state of the game now is no longer a state that we are liable for because we are handing it off to the public. We are not running the servers. We are not running patches or quality of life, okay? Now, the only part of their pushback that will require, I think, some good argumentation in response is the part about making games prohibitively expensive to make. Now, Ross has done a bunch of interviews. I listened to a couple, and he said, listen, this is not retroactive. We're not going to require a bunch of games that were already sort of out there to do this, okay? But games that are currently in development or games that come to the market after this, if they get some laws passed, those games would then have to build themselves in a way to make it so they could hand the game off to the public at some point. Now, Ross acknowledges that this could lead to some copyright issues, because if there's anything proprietary, in the interview that I watched, which I actually thought was quite good, the guy that did the interview brought up the exact same thing that I brought up. Well, what if some company makes some great breakthrough and they don't want that to be sort of handed into the public or handed to their competitors, right? That would be a potential problem. Tom Bilyeu is the interview that I watched. This interview here is the one that I watched. And Ross acknowledges that you would not want the companies to have to hand over their source code or anything that would be potentially protected by copyright. He essentially said you could have laws in conflict. You don't want to require companies to do something that is protected by another law. Okay, so he acknowledges that, and he says there are ways to hand over private servers that would not be any more risky than somebody trying to reverse engineer a game that's in existence right now, okay? That would have to be, I think, one of the more minutia instances where developers would have to weigh in and say, just how easy is this to do? If you make some sort of a breakthrough with game logic or NPCs or AI or enemy aggro that really made your MMO special, but fundamentally your MMO runs out of money and you have to shut it down and you hand over private servers, how do you protect your intellectual property at that point? How do you not risk handing sensitive things over, proprietary things over? That would have to be sorted out by developers. But this is where they're going to have to argue compellingly at a legal level that this is not something that would be prohibitive to the market and to the developers. Everything else from this lobbyist group is a joke because, number one, they do not ask for the games to be online for forever, so that's a stupid pushback. The second thing that's dumb is saying that the companies would be liable. This is absolutely ridiculous. There are plenty of games right now that have gone through end of life that you can engage with and you can play with, and you're not liable if something happens. Like if somebody hops into community chat and calls you a bad name or something and it's not moderated and you're not protected, they're no longer liable, okay? The only thing that's going to require, I think, some good argumentation on the pushback is what level of prohibitive cost is this going to create for developers who want to make MMOs and live service games? Many people have pushed back and said, well, who cares if there are less MMOs and less live service games? Well, it seems like people care because the entire movement is based on the idea that if people like these live service games and these MMOs, they should be able to access them in perpetuity, just in private environments. Well, that would mean that people do care about MMOs and live service games. That's one of the points of the entire movement, is to say there are games that are online that people would like to have protected because they paid for them and they would like to be able to continue to engage with those. I think people acknowledge like access to company servers that are not theirs for forever is not something you have a right to, but you have a right to engage with the game itself as long as somebody's running private servers. Like, none of this would guarantee that you'd be able to access these games in perpetuity because you would need somebody running the servers. Somebody's footing that bill, whether it's like a private citizen or like an organization or a group or a bunch of college buddies. Somebody would have to be running those servers. The point of the movement is not that it would make every single game accessible for forever, but that the possibility would be there so consumers are at some level protected. Now, I've argued in another video that you guys should check out, Gamers Want Refunds. I think an equal important issue that would actually protect us a lot, not just from live service games shutting down, but from bad games launching, is refunds. If you can take a game away from me willy-nilly, I should be able to give it back to you, right? Especially, and I think this is a huge weakness that could be capitalized on as consumers. All these companies shifted to terms of service and licenses that you now play on. You don't actually own the game. Well, that cuts both ways. That means that I could basically give your game back. You can take my, right to play it away. You can take my license away. Well, that means I should be able to get a refund. That means I should be able to give the game back to you. I think that's a very reasonable and logical take. And I think you would honestly, at some level, you might even have an easier time getting that into legislation than legislation that would require companies to build their games in completely different ways. But Ross makes a good point. There was a lot of pushback in the automotive industry about requiring seatbelts, and it was pretty expensive probably to restructure their production lines and invest in new raw materials and get up to date with like patents and safety precautions with seatbelts. So eventually, yes, these sorts of things happen in order to protect consumers, and it does require companies to adapt and to figure out how to pay for it. We'll see what kind of traction it gets, but that's the update on Stop Killing Games. And now I do have a game for your wish list and your radar, and this one is called Ill. This game, if it's not on your wish list or your radar, I think that it should be. It's a first-person survival horror game. It's going to be available on PC via Steam, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and its release date has yet to be announced. They just did an update on PlayStation's Twitter account as well as an interview and a blog, and they said there's going to be 60 FPS monster animations. Pretty grotesque. I did not realize this trailer was that horrific. I'm sorry if I just made everybody a little nauseated this morning as you're having your coffee and your breakfast. There's going to be resource scavenging. There's going to be weapon upgrading. There's going to be boss fights. Check out the PlayStation Q&A or add Ill to your wish list, as they are targeting a 2025 release date and currently don't have a release date. So that's the show open. A little bit longer than usual, but I wanted to do my due diligence on some of these topics. We've got the Game Pass discussion. We've got Stop Killing Games being basically like lobbied against already, and we've got to thank some people. Han shot first, and so did you, and Pathalon Phoenix came in with a 20 bomb during the show's open, and that gets us to 189, and the member battle is going to start off strong as you guys here, I don't have it on the screen. You guys can't see it. There we go. You guys over here on Team YouTube already have 20, and there is going to be 2. There's going to be 2 over here on purple. Dylan the Villain did a 2-month subscription. Thank you so much. And then Nerd Bucket used their Prime sub. A great way to support me on purple is if you're already paying for Amazon Prime, use your Twitch Prime over there every month. It supports me, and you'll never see an advertisement. Thank you guys so much. And then a single gift that comes in from Joker Quinn, and that puts us exactly a 10 bomb away from the next milestone. Let's see which platform decides to steal that. Whoever hits it gets it. Chris Dring was wrong. Game Pass is profitable. He wasn't wrong. He corroborated his own statement, Chris. Like, this is what people don't seem to understand. So let me show you the original tweet, since this is all getting so lost in the sauce here, and he did not correct himself. He actually corroborated what he originally stated. So I'm going to show you the original tweet that set the world on fire, and then I'm going to show you how he corroborated his own claim. He like basically was like, yeah, he elaborated on it, and he in the way that he did this, again, I feel like this is very much a Microsoft mirage, okay? I read it. He said it's not. Then later he said that it is. You couldn't be more wrong, Chris. You could not be more wrong. He actually never said it wasn't profitable, so that's false. So you're misrepresenting what the man originally said. And secondly, you're misrepresenting what he said in the follow-up. So we're going to look at the tweets because you don't have the facts straight at all, as many people do. I know that's how I read it. How you read it doesn't dictate what he said. That would be called, I guess you could call that poor interpretation. How you read it doesn't really matter. It's what he said, okay? We're going to look at it in just a second. 8-Bit Dad with 28 months. And I can't see. Why is this blocking my vision? There we go. Droop 75 with 40 months. And we're at 192. So I'm not really interested in how you read it, okay? This is what the man said. He said, I asked for clarification on the Game Pass is profitable claim and was told no first-party costs are included. He has not walked this back. If anything, he has elaborated on what this means. So, yeah, Game Pass is profitable. You just can't include any of the first-party costs. All of the operational costs, all the publishing dollars, marketing dollars, everything that goes into those big first-party awesome titles that hit Game Pass, yeah, we don't include that in the equation. Well, okay, so you cook the books, basically. You make Game Pass profitable by not including one of the single greatest costs to feed it. Like, amazing way to calculate profit, ladies and gentlemen. The most expensive thing that you do to feed Game Pass, you don't include that in the equation. He also does not walk this back. In this follow-up tweet, Chrome is being stupid on me. Hang on. Hello, Chrome, wake up. I don't know why it does this lately. Like, Chrome just freezes. Let me just close some of these other tabs. Goodness gracious. My Chrome is completely frozen. You have to include that. That's the reason that this tweet got so much attention, okay? The reason that the tweet got so much attention is literally because of what he said, okay? So he comes out and he says this now. He says, I need to correct or clarify something. Let's just analyze this. He doesn't correct or clarify anything here. He doesn't. He does not correct or clarify anything. His original statement is still true. They claim that Game Pass is profitable by not including the costs of the first-party games, okay? He doesn't walk that back. He says, first, Xbox Game Pass is profitable. He puts is in italics. Even when you factor in the lost sales of its first-party teams, sources who know have told me. Now, don't you think this is interesting that his statement was the cost of the first-party games is not included, and now he's saying, well, if you include lost sales. Okay, the original statement was not about lost sales. This is a red herring. This has nothing to do with the original statement. The original statement was about the actual costs to build the game, which we know is pretty exorbitant depending on the game, and he was like, yeah, that's not included. And now he's saying, well, it's profitable even if you factor in lost sales. Nobody was questioning that. Now, that's obviously a factor. I bring that up every time. I'm like, yeah, you also have to factor in the potential lost sales. But the bigger cost that's easy to measure because you know the budget is the cost to build the games. Now, here's the thing. He doesn't walk that back. He elaborates. He says, over 18 months ago, I checked with Xbox about what's included in the Game Pass P&L, profit and loss. Basically, I was looking to see if Game Pass costs factor in the impact to unit sales of internal studios, of their internal studios. Here we go, right here. This is the line. I was told that first-party games have their own P&L separate to Game Pass as they make money via other means. This supports his original statement. They do not include the cost of those games in Game Pass. They have their own P&L, which makes sense. But there's a glaring problem here. They have their own profit and loss separate from Game Pass, but then you'll turn around and have internal sources saying that they weren't happy with the sales of Hi-Fi Rush, and then you shut down the studio. Well, it has its own profit and loss separate from Game Pass. Did anybody measure the fact that Game Pass might have had an impact on the total sales of Hi-Fi Rush? Did anybody measure the fact that, like, you utilize it as a shadow drop onto your subservice and didn't really market the game and didn't really promote the game and didn't really give the game your typical marketing run of a release? So yeah, he doesn't correct what he said. This is the same thing he just said in the other tweet. I felt this piece of internal accountancy might mean Game Pass is profitable, but it sure does put pressure on the margins of its internal games and possibly mean some studios don't make as much profit or any profit at all. Yes, as I think was evidenced by Hi-Fi Rush. Now, he comes down here and he says the same thing. Sources have reached out to tell me that even when you include lost revenue associated with first-party games, not just unit sales, but microtransactions, Game Pass is still profitable. Let's look at the original tweet. That's not what the topic was. The topic was not lost sales. The topic was first-party costs. That means the production cost to make the games. That's why everybody was reacting. This is a reply, by the way. This is a reply with 624,000 views. Look at the views above. 34, 39,000, 26,000, 33,000. Derek Strickland's original tweet only has 255,000 views. A reply buried in a tweet thread has 624,000 views. The reason it has so many views is because of what he said. He didn't say, well, it's profitable even if you include loss of sales. It'd be like, oh, well, okay. Yeah, I mean, they sell the games on other platforms now, so it might be believable that it's not a whole loss for Game Pass, given you're getting $20 a month from people, given that you've got people that forget to use it, given that you've got people that don't even download the game, right? Okay, yeah, you include loss of sales. That isn't what he said. What he said was, there's no first-party costs included in the equation. The reason that went viral and the reason everybody talked about it is because that feels like you're cooking the books. It's like, they've been saying for years to shareholders and the public that Game Pass is profitable. Game Pass is profitable. And it's like, but you don't even include the cost of your own games that you put on it. Which might have helped Hi-Fi Rush argue their case to be like, why would you shut us down? Our game did very well on Game Pass. You've got to factor in our cost of development in that equation because we built a game that then you put on a subservice. Just to clarify, that was me misspelling. After the first sentence when he said it's profitable, I stopped reading. Been a crazy day trying to get family tickets to go to USA for Disneyland. Listen, that's why I always tell people, and the funny thing was, I read this from Dring this morning, and I'm like, am I taking crazy pills? I was like, he's not clarifying. He's not correcting his original statements. He's talking about something completely different. Loss of sales is not the cost to produce the game. It isn't. They're completely different categories. He said dev costs and spend do not come under Game Pass P&L because obviously dev costs can be recouped via microtransactions, premium sales, DLC, etc. No, he didn't say that. You're putting words in his mouth. You're putting words in his mouth. He said, sources have reached out to tell me that even when you include lost revenue associated with first-party games, he says not just unit sales, but microtransactions. He's speaking about losses here. He's not speaking about gains. You're misapplying. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, even if you include unit sales and microtransactions that are lost because a game hits Game Pass, he's saying, we don't like, oh, does he say that in another tweet? Because I'm not seeing that here. So you're saying in another tweet, he says that? He says further up that it puts pressure on the teams that build these games. Go to comments. Oh, yeah, right here. He says, so yes, dev cost spend does not come under Game Pass P&L because obviously dev costs can be recouped via microtransactions, premium sales, DLC. Okay, here's the problem with this. 18 months ago when he asked this question, they're operating under their old playbook, which they weren't publishing all their games yet. Now they internally had decided to, but they hadn't gone forward with that basically that movement to be like, yeah, we're just not doing exclusives anymore. It seemed like they were. I mean, just four games. Like in January of last year is when he asked this question. 18 months ago would have been January of 2024. Xbox had not come out and made it crystal clear. I mean, it was crystal clear to those of us who understand how to read words, but many people thought that they were not going to be putting their first-party titles on other platforms. So that was always the question was, how are you going to recoup costs when millions of people don't have to buy the game? It doesn't make any sense. A lot of us always thought Game Pass is a loss lead. Like you're willing to lose money on Game Pass because you're trying to get people into your funnel. It never seemed like something that was there to generate profit. If you could generate profit with a subservice, then everybody would be doing it. Everybody would be putting their games day and date on the subservice. 50 months from Noberto, he says, 50 big ones. Easy Tone says, Dring's clarification might explain why Hi-Fi Rush didn't save Tango Gameworks. It was a big Game Pass success, but Game Pass isn't counted in his P&L. That's exactly what I said. I was like, You don't what? They have their own P&L. You have companies making games right now that go on a subservice day and date, and you don't include that? You have everything separate? That doesn't make an ounce of sense. It doesn't. That doesn't make any sense. They're actively building a game that you're allowing people to not pay for. State of play. I knew my therapist wanted to schedule something that night, and I was like, let me talk to my wife. And I was also thinking in the back of my mind, that State of Play gonna come any day now. So Thursday at 5, we will co-stream that. I can't wait. We'll do a waiting room all day. Oh, I'm very excited for Ghosts of Yote. Anyways, restaurants in Florida. I don't know where you're going to be in Florida. If you're in Tampa, you go to Charlie's Steakhouse, but you're going to Disney, so you're going to be in Orlando. I don't know. I could ask my wife if there's any really good places in Orlando. So studios need to cover the cost in the buy-to-play market while supplying the game to a subservice. Johnny always, thank you for saying it so concisely. Like, right? Like, this. The reason that his tweet got so much traction is people were like, wait, what? Like, you don't include the cost to make the game in Game Pass? Huh? What in the world? Leno giving up his therapy session for State of Play. The State of Play will be therapy. It will be. Wait, it's tomorrow. Oh, I thought it was Thursday. Yeah, it says deep dive on Thursday. Yeah. Thursday, July the 10th. It's not tomorrow. Yeah, it's Thursday, July the 10th. Let me put it on the calendar so my wife knows what's going on. Okay. There we go. Windows Central did a deep dive on this. Can we just... Let's just take a moment and appreciate... Can we just... I can't be the only one that appreciates the schizophrenic nature of game coverage these days. So we go from, I can't believe this is happening. How can we even trust Xbox going forward to, well, Xbox says Game Pass is profitable, so it's profitable. Oh, well, I guess we solved it then. We solved it. We figured it out. You just ask Xbox. Ask them if it's profitable. Oh yeah, it's profitable. Oh yeah? How's it profitable? Well, we don't include the single largest cost to our company in the equation. I mean, the most expensive thing we do is the budgets of games. Like, the production costs of games are astronomically high. They've been getting further and further inflated. It's led analysts to talking about a game industry bubble. And yeah, we don't include that. We don't include that in the equation. I think this makes total sense why they think all their games should go everywhere. Now the cost of Game Pass is just lost sales where Game Pass is. MASH, I think that's perfectly stated. They're like, well, yeah, we got to publish everywhere. Game Pass is quite literally, it's just a loss of sales. That's all it functions as now. It's $20 a month so that you don't have to buy a game. That's what its functioning is. It's not a profit. It's not a measurement of profit on the individual games that hit the service. Think about it from that perspective as well. There's two sides to this. So when Chris Dring says this right here, I was told first-party games have their own P&L separate to Game Pass as they make money via other means. Do you know what this means? It means that they measure the profit of that game and they don't even include Game Pass's impact on it. This cuts both ways. They don't include the cost to build the game in Game Pass's profitability claims, and then conversely, they don't include Game Pass's impact on that game's ability to generate profit. That's stupid. I don't have another word. I mean, there's other words I'd like to use, but I try to keep this safe for work. That's stupid. Back-to-back tweets, I've seen people saying that they'll never believe anything Microsoft says again to saying, but Microsoft said. It's crazy. I don't get it. Is that even legal, says John Lipkowski? I mean, listen. Hang on. Ghost of Yote State of Play. Thursday, July 10th, 5 p.e.t. We're there. We're going to be there. We're going to co-stream it. Makes sense Doom sold 1 million but had 3 million players. Can you imagine, Mr. Chosen? Can you imagine? Working on Doom the Dark Ages, you have your own profit and loss measurement of your game, and 2 million people played it that didn't have to buy it. And you're like, yeah, that's fine. We have our own P&L. Man, that's fine. That's cool. That's great. That's great. And they're just like pouring a glass of bleach. Like, oh, what in the frick? That's fine. Nah, that's totally fine. We have our own insulated P&L. Yep. That's totally fine. Our cost is not calculated in Game Pass, and Game Pass is not calculated in our profit and loss. That's wonderful. Saying Game Pass is profitable without including all the costs of game production, including marketing, is an outright lie. No wonder Xbox is a mess. Their basic accounting is a mess. When I read what Chris Dring said this morning as clarification, I was like, I know I just woke up, but I'm not seeing this, am I? Like, this is the clarification? Oh, no, it still is profitable, even if you include loss of sales. Yet nobody was talking about that. I mean, if there were people talking about it, I didn't see anybody talking about that. I saw everybody fixating on, wait a minute, what? The cost to build the games is insane. You don't include that? Yeah, we're profitable. We just don't include our costs. All right. All right. It's not a mess. It's clever financial engineering, says Zubair. Here's the question that I would have as a shareholder. If I was a shareholder, I would say, okay, let me get this straight. You guys made this push within gaming as a strategy. And the way that you have continued to tell us that this is profitable is by sliding the costs of building the games out of the equation. I got to be honest with you. If I was a shareholder, I'd be like, what are we letting this department do over here? No, Microsoft stocks are doing just fine. But Microsoft shareholders have historically wanted to get rid of the gaming division. And if I was a shareholder, that's what I would be asking. I'd be like, wait, why are we letting this division do this? This seems absolutely ridiculous. You're telling us something's profitable, but you're not even including the cost to fund it, basically. They don't care about gaming as long as it doesn't mess. You're probably right. As long as Azure is killing it, and 365 and Windows is killing it for them, they probably don't care. Thank you guys for bringing up the Ghost of Yote State of Play. We will be co-streaming that. We'll be doing that on Thursday. I appreciate you guys so much. And a $5 super chat tip from Manuel says, I saw my first hacker in rematch yesterday. He could run at twice the speed and steal the ball without even fighting for it. Yeah, cheating will always ruin a game like that. It's such a shame. Let me set a super chat goal. Every 5 super chats, and then I will gift a member. We're well on our way right now. We need to kind of make up for lost time, though. Well, not make up for lost time. We need to make up for whatever the heck. I was reading some theories about things that the old YouTube did in January, and I feel like we felt it. Like we hit a really big milestone, and we didn't reap the benefits because it seems YouTube has made some changes to the platform. So we're in a bit of a rebuild. That's not the right word, but it feels like that. So you guys are helping. Every day you're here hitting like. Every day you're here chatting. Every day you're here like Make sure you hit subscribe and bell buttons so you're here all the time. That's really helpful to us. So thank you. Every time you watch an upload, right, do all those things. And if you can do a membership, it's greatly appreciated. Financial Magic, if Game Pass is its own subsidiary, they'd only count what they spend. Doesn't hold up if you read 3 more lines, but yeah. I'm not sure what you mean. They'd only count what they spend. It doesn't hold up if you read 3 more lines, but yeah. Sony has to stop this 5 p.m. Eastern work week showcase stuff. I used to not like it, but now, I mean, we could just kind of like hang out all day and kind of talk about what we're hoping to see. It's fun. I love it. Can't they count Game Pass sales like music streams? Every time I play the game, a portion of my sub goes to the game. Well, I mean, but the difference there would be B&E. They enter into agreements with third-party companies, and they write them a lump sum check, which basically serves the same purpose. They're like, estimations of downloads is here. We're going to compensate you with this much money. Here's your lump sum. Instead of paying you like every time somebody opens the game. That's the best time globally. It probably is very good for them globally. I mean, you got to consider, like, you know, they're all over the place. This person replied to me and says, can they tell us how many microtransactions Avowed and South of Midnight have? Dring probably got angry phone calls from Microsoft PR, so he's basically saying the same thing with nice accounting tone. Doesn't even factor in the $80 billion investment, premium sales equal PS5 sales. Right. I'm not going to... Listen. This man has gotten a lot of hate for saying things that are not popular with the Xbox crowd. He came back from the GDC the one year and said he had spoken to some developers that were questioning whether or not they were going to put their games on Xbox. We're now seeing evidence that what he said was exactly true because Xbox has made so many changes that, you know, developers have a hard time predicting the future. So it's like, well, we don't know what you're doing, so we're kind of questioning whether or not we should be building games for your platform because what's your platform going to look like in 5 years, okay? So he's gotten a lot of hate for saying things that are not popular with the Xbox crowd, okay? I don't know exactly where I land on this because my spidey sense is tingling. It's like this right here sounds exactly like what Phil Spencer did with Windows Central. The CFO says, yeah, we're going to be putting first-party games on PlayStation and Nintendo. Phil Spencer says, we have no plans to put Game Pass on PlayStation and Nintendo. So he dodges the question, throws out a red herring, and everybody falls for it. Dring says that Game Pass is profitable, but it doesn't include first-party costs, and then clarifies and says, oh, it is profitable even if you factor in lost sales. But he's not clarifying or correcting his original statement. In fact, he comes down here and he re-emphasizes his original statement. First-party games have their own P&L separate from Game Pass. He's not clarifying or correcting what he said originally. If anything, this opening line is a giant distraction. You don't need that. If you just start reading here, it's perfectly fine. It's like, yeah, I checked with Xbox on this, and basically I was wanting to see the impact on studios, and I was told they have everything separate. This is perfectly good clarification. This opening statement is a red herring. It's like nobody was talking about that. We were talking about this information right here. This paragraph is the most important one. Game Pass profitability is a red herring, says Eugene. It doesn't matter if Game Pass is profitable if the division as a whole is struggling. Well, I think the reason people are fixating on Game Pass... Give me a second, I want to complete the thought. Speaking of hidden costs for Game Pass, what about the cost for server farms around the world for cloud gaming? Thank you, Joe Munger, for the $5 super chat tip. That's a fair question. Yeah, P&L stands for profit and loss. So, the reason people are drilling down and fixating on Game Pass is because the guy from Larian said something about it, the guy from Arcane said something about it. Many people, I think, this is what's happening, and this is very common. People are looking for a scapegoat, which is understandable. When you shut down studios and you cancel projects and you're laying all these people off, what did most of us say? Well, that ABK, oh my gosh, they spent all that money in ABK. They've got to recoup it. Well, actually, the dust settles, and it seems like they want to invest $80 billion into AI infrastructure, and since gaming makes them the least amount of money, gaming's on the chopping block. They're going to recoup a lot of their operational costs by just shutting down studios, canceling games, right? So it makes sense that people were also drilling down on, well, Game Pass is a factor here. Game Pass has been harmful to the brand and the studios, and we've literally seen a Game Pass hit have its studio close. Right? So it makes sense that people are zeroing in on Game Pass. It's why, as I pointed out earlier, it's why Chris Dring has a simple reply tweet with over 600,000 views. Because he says, Game Pass is profitable. He was told no first-party costs are included. So you're saying something's profitable, and then you don't include one of your more significant costs to keep Game Pass full of great games. Like, that's significant. That's why his tweet got all the traction. Yeah, I'm being told too about the layoffs. They're going stronger into the contract policy. That doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah, I need to shut all this off. I don't need some of these things anymore. I don't need some of these domains. Hang on. I need to flag this email so that I read it later. Okay. So Game Pass in and of itself is profitable, but the first-party games included are failing because of it. Okay. So I'm trying to think of an analogy here. Thank you, Dylan, for gifting a member over here on YouTube. It would be like saying, okay, so when we pay for the coffee, all right? When we pay for the coffee, I pay for the bags to be printed first. That's the first thing I pay for. Okay? I pay for the bags to be printed. A company handles the printing that is not the roasting company. Okay? I then pay a fee to have the coffee roasted and ground and then bagged. Okay? So two costs now. Bags printed and made, coffee roasted and put in the bags. So I've got two things I'm paying for. Third thing I pay for is shipping, which is horrible lately, like exorbitant. Okay, so that's expensive. Okay. There we go. I got three things that I pay for. Three. Now, if I'm speaking to somebody who's looking to invest in the company of Reforge Roast, they want to invest in, a subsidiary of Reforge Media, and I'm like, yep, we're very profitable. Our coffee's very profitable. And they're like, well, how much do you make per bag? I'm like, oh, our profit margin on the bag is like 80%. They would say, how the frick are you doing that? And I'm like, oh, well, we don't include the cost to ship, and we don't include the cost of the bags. Because really what we're doing is we're measuring the profitability of the coffee itself, the beans, the flavor, etc. Shipping doesn't affect that, and the bags don't affect that. So what we really do is we only crunch the profitability of the coffee by only measuring the cost to roast and grind the beans. Sounds like a bunch of nonsense, doesn't it? It sounds stupid. I sound like an idiot. Right? I sound like a moron. Because the cost to get this bag in your hands is including all of those things. The shipment to my house, the shipment to your house, the bags themselves, the printing company. I pay for the bags. I pay for the printing. Like, I pay for all those things. That company would be like, you're a moron, bro. We're not going to invest in your coffee. You're cooking the books. You're making it seem like you're more profitable than you are. You're not getting an 80% profit margin on those bags because you're not including the cost to produce the coffee. Someone out there believes you? Yeah, apparently I need to get investors that love Xbox a lot because they'll buy this nonsense. So when they cut studios, they look at their total sales and cost. The Game Pass is not counted because it has its own separate lane. That way you never double count. This way you also never double count. Yeah, but the problem with that, Mash, is thank you, Joker Quinn, for gifting a member as well, getting us to 194. We're 6 away from the next milestone. Purple, this is a perfectly good time to flex your ability to do an individual amount. Yeah, here. This is a good tweet from Evidence here. Evidence has got a good tweet on this. Let's just put this up on the screen. I can already tell this is a good tweet. I can already tell this is a good tweet. Here's my analogy this morning. All right, so Evidence says, correct me if I'm wrong with this analogy. Say you are building a house yourself. You go to Home Depot to buy all the tools and materials needed. You live in it for free because you built it. Now you want to sell it. You would still account for the time and the material to equal the profit. Right? Yes, because just because you're the one that did it doesn't mean that there is not a significant amount of cost associated with all those things that you did. If you were dumping those costs onto another company, then you can shutter and get massive tax breaks as a result. It makes sense. They can do funky with the balance sheet, but the division overall will have profit and loss, says Hilly. Illuminati says, tell me the basics of how Game Pass works. Wait, what? Illuminati, what's your issue here? Let's read what you're saying. I don't give an F what people in this PS slanted room think. Game Pass is profitable or it would have been scrapped by now. Okay. I tell you what we're going to do with you. You're done. The minute somebody starts talking crap about the chat like that, you don't get to hang out here anymore. You've lost your privileges because you can come in here and you can argue and you can debate, but the minute you're going to fly off the handle and slander everybody in chat, you don't belong here. You belong somewhere else. You're not allowed to do that. And now we are seeing people say corporations like Microsoft are run like the mafia. Here's the other thing that people are saying. This is funny to me. Even Chris Dring said it. I thought Nick's response to Chris Dring was quite good. I thought this was quite good. I want you guys to see this. I thought this was a good tweet, and I like Chris Dring, but I thought he needed a teeny tiny bit of awareness about what he does for a living, and I thought Nick's reply was quite good. Let me see if I can find it. Hang on. Nick, why'd you have to tweet so much last night? Here it is. Okay. So, Chris Dring says, somebody says, quick question, seriously, why does everyone care if a multi-trillion-dollar company, Microsoft Xbox, makes money or not? I promise I'm not trolling. Chris says, I get why I do because I'm a business journalist, but I really don't understand why gamers do. And Nick says, if gamers didn't care, you wouldn't be a business journalist. I mean, that's a very small amount of words, and that's a sniper shot if I've ever seen one. Homie, Chris, I love you. I've defended you before in the past. Brother, people care. That's why you're now doing this independently. Chris, can you hear me, Chris? You literally make a living covering this because people care and they're interested. Brother, I don't really get why gamers care about this stuff. The frick? What? You should probably be glad that they care. I'm sitting here talking to hundreds of people about it because people care. They're like, Xbox pivoted significantly over the last couple of years, and one of the significant tenets and identity markers of the brand was Game Pass. You can't have Game Pass be central to the brand's identity for like 10 years and then be like, I don't get why people care if it's profitable or not. Well, of course people care if it's profitable or not. They wonder, how are we doing this? This seems like this deal is just too good to be true. Do you guys remember what Groupon was doing to small businesses? I saw a comment this morning. I've got to put this one on the screen too. All right, I got to put this on the screen too, because I wasn't going to get into people on Twitter. All right, but good golly. Okay, so Mr. Uncle Crazy Jaffe, love you Jaffe, is out here saying this. He says, can you please educate me on why anybody cares if Game Pass is sustainable? If it's not, they'll kill it. Move on to the next thing. In the meantime, why not just enjoy it? Okay? Jaffe, I love you, but what the frick, man? Stop gatekeeping conversations and topics. He's like, why does everybody care about this? Why do you care that we care, Jaffe? Jaffe, why do you care that we care? Let us care. Let us care about something. We're allowed to do that, okay? Hazador, which, thank you for unblocking me. I don't know why he ever had me blocked to begin with. I never said anything to him. He says, you want to hear why? Because some people actively want this service to die. Okay, first and foremost, this is sweeping and reductionist, and I would argue is false. I don't think there are people that want it to die. I think there have been people that have analyzed the business sense of it for a very long time and have said, this doesn't seem sustainable. This doesn't seem sustainable. You guys are giving away so much for so little. This seems too good to be true, okay? There was a time where I went to a local business, and it was Kids Eat Free. They also were putting a BOGO coupon in the local paper or something. So we were going in, and the kids were eating free, and the parents were buying one entree, but getting two, because it was a BOGO, okay? We did that for 3 weeks, and then the company promptly said, BOGOs cannot be used on Kids Eat Free night. Why? Because that was too good to be true, okay? The whole time we were doing it, we thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is going to last, right? It seems too good to be true. Game Pass was feeling like that. It was like, holy cow, this is so much value. This can't quite possibly be maintained. Do you ever wonder why they moved day and date to Ultimate? Do you ever wonder why Ultimate's price went up? Yeah, because everybody was saying for the longest time, this doesn't seem sustainable, okay? Hazador goes on to say, I don't even pay for PS Plus or Game Pass, but more options is never a bad thing for consumer. I don't agree with this. More options can be a bad thing for the consumer when it's damaging to the business and the business goes away. That's not good for the consumer. If people are taking advantage of something like that, like the Groupon thing that was hurting some small businesses, or if that company was just allowing us to do that BOGO, Kids Eat Free thing, guess what? They could go out of business. Maybe they stop doing Kids Eat Free, and guess what? Then we lose those options and we lose those choices. So more options are not universally a good thing. I think this is too sweeping, okay? I appreciate where Hazador is coming from. He's like, who really cares? If we have options, use those options until those options are exhausted. But I do think there's a symbiotic relationship, because it's like if you're doing something that is actually harmful to the very business, like let's just imagine, more options are good for the consumer, but let's imagine that Game Pass is playing a significant role into studio closures like Hi-Fi Rush's studio, or like the studio that was working on Perfect Dark. If Game Pass is a contributing factor to that, that's not good for you as the consumer, because you now have less choice, because you have less product, you have less talent, and less games coming to you to purchase. So no, I don't think that it's just this blank check of like, well, who cares if it's bad or not profitable? But what if it's internally acidic to their ability to keep companies and studios open? What if they're internally assessing all of this and they're saying, oh my gosh, yeah, so less choice is bad? Right. They can work against each other, can they not? If you give people this level of choice and you're like, well, more choice is always good. Well, is it? What if more choice leads to less choice down the line? So now you're basically a snake eating your own tail. It's like, well, I love all this extra choice. I love all this Game Pass. Yum, yum, yum. Let me eat more Game Pass. And then you end up consuming your choices and things in the future because you created an ecosystem that's cannibalistic. Like, you create an ecosystem of non-purchase, you create a cannibalistic environment, and then when people are like, is this profitable? Why do you care if it's profitable? What do you mean? What we're not allowed to question the profitability of something that seems too good to be true? I don't get why people want to gatekeep concern. Listen, why would people be concerned that I'm concerned? That seems even weirder. There are people right now that are heavily concerned with sports and drafts and players' stats. And I don't give a single care about that. It doesn't change my life. It wouldn't impact my life. If somebody gets a triple-double, I don't even really understand what that means because I don't follow basketball, but I hear my brother say it sometimes. Listen, it doesn't do anything to my life, but I'm not like, why do people care about this? Like, I don't... Just because it doesn't concern me doesn't mean it's not concerning to people. We care because if it's not profitable, it goes away. It's just deflection because they know it's not profitable, says PWH down. Edward Hulse with a £5 super chat says, Ghost of Yote State of Play. Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Atsu's Journey, 20 minutes long. Can't wait. We'll be there. We'll be co-streaming it. It's silly and short-sighted, this concern. That sounds cute, but not really how gamers actually flow. I feel like people like you have zero self-awareness. You're in a chat about gaming industry news, gaming industry coverage with hundreds of other people, and you're saying that gamers don't really care about this, they're not really concerned. What are you doing with your time then? Really self-reflect on what you're doing right now, and you're calling the discussion disingenuous as you contribute to it in a disingenuous way, like you're a fish that doesn't know it's wet. Why are you actively participating in a stream about gaming news claiming that like this stuff doesn't matter? Why are you wasting your time here then? Why aren't you off doing something better and more important and more worthy of your time? You don't make sense in the equation. People taking an interest into the inner workings of a business, that actually makes sense. Plenty of people do that. Plenty of people analyze financial reports, financial projections, patterns in the industry, trends in the industry, market demand, consumer response. Plenty of people take an interest in this stuff. What doesn't make sense to me are the people like you that want to come in and be like, why is everybody talking about this? No, the question is, why are you showing up and caring what we talk about? Like, I don't show up to an art discussion about the density of oil paint and be like, why are you guys talking about this? It's something that they care about. I'm saying we can't do anything about it. Or I should say we don't. Plenty of people have done something about it. Plenty of people have moved their allegiance. Plenty of people have canceled Game Pass. Plenty of people have taken advantage of Game Pass. Plenty of people have done the dollar Game Pass thing and exploited the system. What do you mean? One of the primary reasons Game Pass is in the state that it's in is because it was extremely popular and a very, very good deal. What do you mean? Of course gamers have reacted to all of this stuff. And not only that, you can impact what happens in the market if people shift and move. I mean, there's like 1.2 million signatures on the Stop Killing Games initiative. To act like we don't have power to do anything, I think is ludicrous. How many times did a player say they want to boycott a game, but the gamers still buy it and microtransactions? Stop with the cap. No one's capping. It sounds like you're trying to navigate what people can and can't talk about. It sounds like you're trying to be a detractor in the discussion. And I think for that, you're just going to take the day off. You're just pulling away from the discussion, so you can't talk for the rest of the day. I'm talking to people who are interested in the subject. You're not, so I'm sparing you the struggle. Just go somewhere else. Why do you watch professional sports and movies? You can't impact them by watching. Yeah, people scream and cheer in their living rooms for sporting events all the time. You're not changing the outcome at all. You're thinking that more than $6 billion a year is not good enough to be profitable for a few bigger games a year. Joel, here's the problem with what you're saying, okay? They don't give us the numbers, so all you're doing is just speculating on what the average revenue generation of the product is. Revenue is not profit. That's why we're having this discussion. You really have to analyze something. People are like, I don't get why people care. Okay, well, a reply deep in a tweet thread has 600,000 views. Let's refresh it. Let's refresh and see where it currently lands. Okay, it's gotten 10,000 more views since we started today's stream. Okay, 600,000 people have taken an interest in the Game Pass's profitable claim because they don't include first-party costs. Okay, so the word profit is typically contextualized within what you've made once you've removed all the costs to make it. Right? It's called a profit margin. So there's your cost, and there's the margin between the cost and the revenue that you've generated. So you generated this much revenue, and the cost to generate everything and to produce everything is like here. And then the margin between the revenue and the revenue generated and the cost is your profit margin, right? That's how these words are typically used. And the reason people took an interest in this is because you're saying something is profitable, and you're not including all of the costs to make it happen. That's why it's an interesting subject. We've had to hear for years. We've had to hear for years that Game Pass is profitable, and then we find out from a guy who spoke directly to Microsoft, oh yeah, they don't even calculate the cost to make the games. They have their own P&L. They have their own profit and loss metric. Wait, what? Oh, also, if you go back to the FTC trial, there is this is like wonderfully insightful into the thing that we're discussing right now. Phil Spencer said the following, all right? Where did I put that? Where did I put that? Here it is. Engadget's got the report. Let's see here. This is great. This is so hyper relevant, and I want to say thank you to, I believe, Jaster. Did you find this yesterday? I think Jaster found this yesterday. Let's just take a look at this. So this is an email exchange between Phil Spencer and the Xbox partner software architect, right? Jean-Emile Aline, I'm going to assume here. So they're asking, okay, how do we measure this stuff now? So you have an Xbox partner software architect is taking an interest in this subject. Why do people care about this? Oh, I don't know. I mean, when there was a massive, unprecedented acquisition a couple years ago, we got access to Phil Spencer's emails, and he says some pretty interesting things here. Single Gifted comes in from Stone Spire. We are officially a 5-bomb away. We're officially a 5-bomb away from 200. Who's going to steal it? Let's see. All right, so here we go. Eileen says, so how should studios now measure their worth to the portfolio? I know you dislike the Netflix analogy. That's an interesting little insight there. Why does Phil not like the Netflix analogy? Anyways, Wired Rope's going to steal it with a 5-bomb. And we are now at 200. So just a little tidbit of interest there. Just a little tidbit of interest. Phil doesn't like the Netflix analogy. But I'm trying to understand the equivalent of ending a show in their model. Hang on, I got to turn off the Twitch alerts just for a second here. Spencer. Different games perform differently. Some are very high on play and therefore a higher impact on retention. Others are good top of funnel for attract, but they don't get much play. You need both. I'd be lying. Oh, this is the important part right here. I'd be lying if I told you we had the Excel sheet of the value of a game completely figured out. They're speaking within the context of Game Pass. And the reason they're speaking within the context of Game Pass is this person is trying to figure out, how do you measure a studio's worth? Their cost is high. Their production is spread out. How do we measure their worth if we're putting their stuff on Game Pass? Because this is all discussed before they're a third-party publisher. This is before they started publishing games on Nintendo and PlayStation, okay? Aline furthers the discussion. I'd be really saddened if the reduction of an inherently creative endeavor to a single cell going red was the detriment. Oh my gosh. I didn't pre-read this. Good golly, is that not insightful? I'd be really saddened if the reduction of an inherently creative endeavor to a single cell going red was the detriment. Oh man. If only he knew. I don't know if this is a he or she. If only that, we'll just say they. If only they knew. If only they knew what was coming on the horizon. That creative endeavors and companies were going to get shut down because nobody knows. Nobody knows why. Because according to Phil Spencer, they've not figured it out. They don't know how you measure the value of a studio. How about looking back on the studio closures of the past? Would a product like Game Pass have changed your mind on any particular studio's closure? It's a fair question. I feel like the highlighted question is a preview of an opinion you have. Do you think Game Pass would have saved a studio we once owned? My turn to say, honestly, I don't know. I don't really know what goes into closing a studio. How much funding versus personnel versus output feeds into the decision? Spencer, I don't think we've ever closed a studio due to the studio's P&L. Sure, Jan. It's almost always been either from leadership leaving, Lionhead as an example, or a team just losing its passion, Ensemble as an example. Really? Really, Phil? Man, I really wonder what these closed studios think about that. Honestly, guys, it's not because of P&L. It's not because of profit and loss. It's because of leadership leaving, or you just lost your passion. So in other words, it's not our fault. It's the studio's fault. You see, hashtag blame the devs is baked into the DNA of the dadgum company. It's no wonder all the fanatics and the bleed green hardcore Xbox fans have a propensity to blame the devs. Phil himself is like, it's the devs' fault if we close them down. It's not a profit and loss thing. Leadership leaves or they lose their passion. It's their fault. Fair. This is Eileen or Elian, probably Elian. This is also the second time you've called me on a question that sounds like an opinion, which leads me to believe that happens to you a lot. I promise, if I have an opinion that is worth me sending an email, I will give it. Sounds like there's a little, it's getting a little tense. It's getting a little tense here, boys. Per my previous email, we're getting some per my previous email vibes going on here. I appreciate this forum too much to be disingenuous. In other words, Phil, don't call me into question here. I'm just asking you questions. You know what's interesting about this? Phil doesn't like the Netflix analogy. You know what he also doesn't seem to like? He doesn't seem to like questions about how this all works. Gee, I wonder why. Nobody freaking knows. Phil himself doesn't know how this all works. So yes, people are interested. Of course people are interested. Those are emails between two people who work at the gaming division of the largest company in the world, and they're saying, we don't really know how we measure a studio's worth. We don't know. We're spending crazy amounts of money to produce games, to put them on Game Pass. We have it as a separate profit and loss, which makes no sense. And we're going to continue to tell people that Game Pass is profitable because we've essentially cooked the books to ensure that Game Pass is viewed as profitable. Good golly. I don't know how you can listen to Phil say, yeah, we don't really know how it works, and then you see studios get closed down, and then you see comments made like the one that Chris Dring made that went viral, basically, is Game Pass is profitable. I was told no first-party costs are included. He elaborates further and says that they have their own separate P&L. First-party games have their own profit and loss separate to Game Pass. And you got Phil in an email saying, yeah, we don't really understand. We don't really know how to measure a studio's value. And he says, yeah, it's just a combination of things. It's ethereal, apparently. It's just I want you to really think about what the man said. There's a guy inquiring, like, how do you do this? And he's like, yeah, it's just kind of a bunch of random things. It's just a vibe thing. Phil might as well have said, yeah, I basically go to the studio and see if they pass the vibe check. It's just kind of a vibe thing, I kind of go and they pass the vibe check. If that passion's there, they get to stay open. So listen, if Phil Spencer visits your studio, you better really show him that you're passionate, because he doesn't know how to value your studio. He doesn't know how to measure your studio's worth. He doesn't know how to calculate your contribution to the portfolio or to Game Pass. It's just a big, giant frickin' mystery. It's just a big mystery. So when studios get closed and people get laid off and projects get canceled, we don't really know why. It's interesting. In his email about this, they're doing this to ensure that the future is just as profitable as now and blah, 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 corporate PR BS speak. My question to him would be, how did you determine who should be laid off? You don't really seem to have a way of measuring a studio's value or worth. Did they just lose their passion? Is that what happened to the Perfect Dark team? Is that what happened to Turn 10? Is that what happened to the ZeniMax MMO project? They just didn't have enough passion when internally we were hearing that people really liked it? Hang on. I owe the Purple Platform 5 members. I'm going to pay that now. I'm going to say it now. I think a Stone Phil Spencer would be great to hang out with. We go through a vigorous vibes-based analysis when determining a studio's overall worth. Matt says, why do you question what a corporate CEO paid millions to say things are going fine, tells you that things are going fine? Just because thousands are losing their jobs, can't you just eat the corpo message? That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Mash. I don't know if we can ever trust Xbox ever again. Xbox says, well, Game Pass is profitable. And they're like, I believe you. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 18 times in a row, what else you got? You know? It's like, what the frick are we doing? PWH down with the super chat. $5 super chat says, Game Pass is profitable. We don't know how many subs they have, who's dubbed to which tier, how much it costs to have games, but it's profitable. Yeah. Yeah. It's profitable, guys. Guys, it's profitable. We don't know anything, but I know that it's profitable. Why? Because Xbox told me so. That reminds me of a Sunday school song that ends in, the Bible tells me so. And I feel like these guys would sing a song in the church of Xbox that says, because Xbox tells me so. You know? Game Pass is profitable, this I know. For Xbox tells me so. Like, they literally decimate studios and plans for games and cancel games, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can never trust them again. Hey everybody, yeah, Game Pass is profitable. Thank you Xbox, we believe you. This is being this is bang out of order. Phil Spencer is out here on the front lines getting Helldivers 2 for us, vibe checking all the games coming. He's the gaming dispenser, and your heresy is noted. Oh, that's good, Hilly. Oh, I mean, chat, what are we doing here? You know what's sad? Xbox used to be seen as the rebel in the gaming industry when it came out. Used to have a cool factor, but now, I mean, is something. Beat the heat. They always send these. They always send these emails about the electric companies like, here's how to beat the heat. And I'm like, let me tell you something about that. I'm just running the air conditioner. Yeah, running it these times a day. Why don't you leave me alone, okay? We're trying to survive. So Xbox has a good coupon currently. It costs too much. Eventually, they'll no longer honor it. If it goes away, I'll still be thankful for the savings Game Pass has given my friends and family. Yeah, so Caleb, here's what I think happens sometimes. People try to short circus? It is a bit of a circus. They try to short circuit interest in dialogue by invoking subjective enjoyment, right? So you could be like, man, this game's got 85 glitches and bugs in it. And they're like, I don't know why you care about that. I'm having a good time. It's like, you come to the discussion and you're basically like, well, you can't really take an interest in this because people save money with it, or well, you can't really be critical of this because you subscribe to it. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So the minute you're critical of something, or the minute you're inquisitive about its profitability, according to you, we're supposed to just get rid of it? We're supposed to not have it anymore? Lono, the Dring guy has made some revisions that say he's been contacted with more info on how Game Pass is still profitable even those costs are factored in. Solemn, you've been here a long time. You should know that I've already covered that extensively, and he doesn't actually revise anything. This is not a revision. This is not a revision at all. He is completely reinforcing this statement. This statement is, Game Pass is profitable. Well, how? Well, no first-party costs are included. Let's go to his revision. That is not a revision. He says, I was told that first-party games have their own P&L separate to Game Pass as they make money via other means. Yeah, he's not revising anything. This is the same thing said another way. Games have their own profit and loss separate from Game Pass. Game Pass does not calculate the cost of the games. This opening salvo is a red herring. Here's a red herring. He says, Game Pass is profitable even when you factor in the lost sales of the first-party teams. Sources who would know have told me. Yeah, what's interesting is this sounds just like when Phil Spencer dodged the question about Game Pass. About first-party games going to PlayStation and Nintendo, and he does an interview with Windows Central, and he says, we have no plans to put Game Pass on PlayStation and Nintendo. That wasn't the question. The reason that this tweet went viral is because he says Game Pass is profitable, and we don't include first-party costs. It's basically like cooking the books. You're not including one of the more exorbitant levels of cost to keep Game Pass going to claim that it's profitable. That's some shenanigans, if I've ever seen it. And then he comes out and says, well, no, it's still profitable even if you factor in lost sales. Yeah, you didn't talk about lost sales here. That's not why this went viral. This went viral because you were talking about first-party costs. He's not clarified anything. He's not corrected anything. Somebody from Xbox reached out and said, hey. Game Pass is profitable, even if you include loss of sales. What? That's not what anybody was asking about. Nobody was asking about that. I'm telling you, I made a video last week about this. Proceed with caution with Xbox. They say things that are technically true to give you a false impression. This is exactly what they did the last time something like this happened. The CFO says, we're going to put first-party games on PlayStation and Nintendo. And Phil Spencer comes out and says, we have no plans to put Game Pass on PlayStation and Nintendo. And what happens? All the bleed green guys are like, haha, told you the games aren't going. And it's like, but that's not what Phil said. Phil didn't speak to first-party games. He spoke to Game Pass. This is the exact same thing. Yeah, Game Pass is profitable. They just don't include the cost of the first-party games. Oh, wait. Listen, guys. Game Pass is profitable even if you include loss of sales. Whoa. You're just switching categories. You're just jumping train tracks. Nobody was talking about loss of sales. It's the same thing. The playbook is so simple, it hurts my brain that people are falling for it again. I'm like, that is not what you said. You weren't talking about loss of sales. You were talking about the cost to make the games. And you know what everybody's going to run with? You know what they're all going to run with? They're going to run with this opening part right here. That's what they're all going to run with. Oh, no. Dring qualified his statements. Yeah, Game Pass is profitable even if you factor in loss of sales. Oh, it's a bunch of smoke and mirrors. It's a bunch of smoke and mirrors. How much of Game Pass revenue goes towards it then? If they have separate P&L, then you can't say overhead costs to make the game. It gets odd. Game Pass revenue has to pay something to the devs. Joel, you're asking some of the right questions, my friend. That's exactly the problem. It's like, well, Game Pass generates a ton of revenue. How much of that revenue is measured as a direct correlative or causative relationship with a game hitting Game Pass? So how much did Ninja Theory get credit for? How much did Call of Duty get credit for? We don't know. They don't know. That's the point. That's why I showed this email exchange from Phil where he said, they don't know. I'd be lying to you if we had the Excel sheet of the value of a game completely figured out. They don't even know. They don't have it figured out. They're like, we don't know. We don't know how you measure the value of a game and its addition to the portfolio and Game Pass and how much money Game Pass generates and how much it costs to make the game and, you know, how many sales we didn't get and how many sales we would have got, and, you know, the game production cost has to be accounted for because they're adding value to Game Pass. You're getting to add value to Game Pass basically for free according to how they do the budget. The way they measure the money, Game Pass just gets all this free value added to it. Just this eternal flow of free stuff. Doesn't cost anything to make these games. When you look at Game Pass, it's not calculated. None of the revenue goes to the studios. The studios just lose sales. Have bad bottom lines and they get closed. See Hi-Fi Rush. Why do you care? Why do gamers care about this? Why don't you? To anybody that's saying that right now, anybody, why don't you care? You don't care that the structure of this business is potentially leading to studio closures and the cancellation of games? You don't care about that? The irony is the people that posture the most like they don't care and they'll farm tweets and my content for content. The irony is like they're the tourist. You're the tourist. You don't care about any of this crap. You come in, you'll visit, you'll have a good laugh, and you'll leave. You don't give a frick if the city that you visited or the people that live there. You're just a tourist. You don't care about any of the things that happen. You're just here to laugh. You don't give a frick. And funny enough, you know what's funny is, I bet a lot of these folks are out here, like, getting real self-righteous about stop killing games. Why don't we have an initiative like maybe Stop Killing Studios? Can we sign an initiative where Xbox and Microsoft aren't allowed to just kill studios because of the way they run the studios and the way they run their contract policy and the way they run their budgets? Yeah, Stop Killing Games. I've promoted it. I've told people to go sign. I think it's a good initiative. Well, maybe we should tell Microsoft to stop killing studios. Because Stop Killing Studios is one of the fastest ways to kill games. $10 super chat from Easy Tone. Also in the FTC docs, Microsoft was aiming for 100 million Game Pass subs, 35 million is way below. For the if it wasn't working, they'd stop crowd. Satya did consider shuttering Xbox in 2021 before the ABK deal. Well, they considered shuttering them in 2014 when Phil took over. Some studios suck. Let's keep it real. There are plenty of studios that are victims of their own poor management. Like, look what's happening with Build a Rocket Boy, right? Microsoft is killing studios. It's I don't know how you can't look at that and see that none of this is a measurement of whether or not these studios were worthwhile or whether or not their products were worthwhile. Microsoft is killing them because they need to lower operational costs because they're wanting to invest all this money into AI and they spend an insane amount of money. Like, to say that the studio behind Hi-Fi Rush, oh yeah, they sucked, they had it coming. What the frick? That doesn't make any sense. That was a good game. Oh, but it didn't sell well enough. You're so close. You're so close. Your metal detector's going bing, 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 bing. You're very, very close to the problem and why people are like, wait, you're out here bragging about the profitability of Game Pass, but you're not including the cost of the budgets? Huh? Okay. I guess Tango didn't get a say in that, so their game just gets added to Game Pass, and when they're questioned on their P&L. See my last two comments. Okay. AOZ says they don't pay the first-party studio the commensurate fee to put the game on Game Pass to improve the P&L of the studio, thus making the game studio look bad and shuttered. I think what AOZ just said is incredibly important. I want you to really listen to that. So, what's good, Christos? If you're a third-party company and Xbox comes to you and they want to put your game on Game Pass, the publisher, in those instances, is probably going to justify that if the lump sum fee is enough to shore up revenue to offset potential losses to ensure that the P&L line of that game is sound. So profit and loss is sound because you get a lump sum from Microsoft to offset the fact that your game's not going to be selling copies. Microsoft does not do that with their first-party studios. Thus, they are making that company's P&L line very difficult to not just automatically be in the red. You're not giving them a lump sum to offset it. Do you even have an equation to be like, well, let's hypothetically imagine that this was a third-party studio and we did write a lump sum? Would that should almost be like a line item of like, well, hypothetically, if we would have given them this money, they would have been profitable. You have to factor that into the equation. You gut their ability to make money. You don't pay them a lump sum. That's what you do with third-party companies. And then you're going to turn around and be like, yeah, guys, your P&L is just not good enough. Your profit and losses are just, oh my gosh. Piper with 7 months says, how is it your business if Xbox is profitable or not? You have fanboys living check to check, trying to tell Microsoft how to be a business. I mean, my response to you, Piper, is how is it your business what I talk about? If you, again, to the guy that did this earlier, if you don't like the subject, if you don't think it's any business to talk about it, then literally, in the most literal sense, go the frick somewhere else. Like, plenty of people are interested in this. They're here right now talking about it. They're here right now listening. If it's not interesting to you, you're making strange choices with your day. There are plenty of things I'm not interested in. I'm not like, well, let me go to a live stream and let's just chat this up about how much I'm not interested in this. Like, what the frick are you doing with your time? Your time is very valuable. You will not get any of the moments back that you have spent here. You won't get them back. So why waste them here if you're not interested in what we're talking about? I'm here to make sure that you guys know that I don't care about the thing that you're talking about. Okay, thanks for sharing, I guess. This isn't group therapy about bad choices with your time. Like, Eugene says, people really miss the biology class about symbiotic relationships. A VIP from Narwaffle, 37 months, and he puts a farty bomb emote in there. He might be trying to manifest it. We'll see. We shall see. Wait, are we only at 22 for YouTube? No, that's not right. Hang on. YouTube should be 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. YouTube should be 27. And then purple should be 7. Yeah, purple should be 7. There we go. Xbox is the largest publisher in gaming. It matters to us gamers because Microsoft has already eliminated games that we would have had. That's well said, Evidence. That's well said. I don't get... Did you see the Schreier tweet? What did Schreier say? I mean, he's on Blue Sky, isn't he? Did Purple win yesterday? I'm not actually sure who won. No, I don't think they did. I'm not actually sure. Think about it this way. This is where the hypocrisy really, really, really burns me up. Some of y'all celebrated the largest acquisition in gaming history, and then you have the nerve to walk in to the rubble of that acquisition and be like, I don't know why you guys care. Why do you care if studios get closed down? Why do you care if games get canceled? Why do you care if Game Pass is probable? Why did you care about a merger and acquisition? Well, now all of a sudden that the chickens are coming home to roost, it's like, well, I don't know why we care about all these business side of things. I mean, you know, an entire fan base cheered for an unprecedented acquisition, and now that it's seemingly causing problems, well, now all of a sudden we're not supposed to care about the business side of things. Well, a lot of people seem to care about the business side of things when they were cheering for an acquisition. Now all of a sudden we're not supposed to care about the business side of things because the acquisition didn't pay off very well? Piper says, I wasn't talking directly to you. How is it your business if Xbox is profitable or not? You have people living check to check trying to tell Microsoft how to be a business. Again, Piper, I don't understand what you're saying, though. Wouldn't people want them to be profitable? I've said this many times, Piper. I want my favorite game companies especially, I want them to make stupid amounts of money, just buckets of cash is typically what I say. I want them to make buckets of cash because then they're going to keep making games. I want people who make real-time strategy games to make buckets of cash because then they're going to continue to make real-time strategy games and all the fans of real-time strategy games can enjoy them. I don't play RTSs. I don't. But I think when an RTS game comes out, I want it to be successful because it's good for all the fans of RTSs. It's good for the developers. It's good for any publishing dollars that went to that RTS. Thank you so much for renewing Raijin 46 months in a VIP over here on YouTube. Jason Schreier weighed in and said the following. The Xbox Game Pass is or isn't profitable story that's been floating around this week is very silly. Profitability is a squishy metric that any company can manipulate in all sorts of ways with dark accounting wizardry. The metric that matters most to Microsoft is growth, not profitability. I think that's why Chris Dring's tweet went viral, because people were like, wait a minute, you've been saying this entire time that it's profitable, and really what you're doing is you're doing wizardry. You're shifting things around to make it seem like something, so you can say something's profitable. But what you're really saying is, well, I mean, we're willing to let studios take it on the chin so that we can build games and put them on Game Pass. We give them no credit for that. And we also don't take away any of that cost from Game Pass's profitability. Hadigan says, Lono, as an Xbox fan during the ABK trial, I was all for the acquisition, as at the time I truly hoped Xbox would revive old IPs and utilize the companies to their fullest potential. I was blinded by hope and personal desires and have no problem admitting I was wrong and bought into the Xbox Kool-Aid. And I have a massive amount of respect for people that have done that, Hadigan. A lot of people have said, this was a mistake. We got this one wrong, boys. You know, a student of history could have told you that this was a bad idea and that the results would not be something that would benefit consumers and employees. And if the moratorium on holding people accountable is over, are we past that phase where we're not supposed to do that because we're supposed to champion empathy, which is another way of spelling cowardice? Well, then plenty of people should be held accountable for how they framed this and how they covered this. Same with Game Pass. Same with Game Pass. It's like the way that Game Pass has been, the thing that you've really got to consider here, and this is I'm always going to come back to this. Why is there this undercurrent of counter narrative every time? It's so, it's eerily effective. It's almost like people are prepared beforehand and they know. It's like they know. Last time I saw you had beautiful long hair. That was a long time ago. I cut it in 2021 because I went all of 2020 and didn't get a haircut, understandably, because of the pandemic. And I was so tired of it. I had worn it in a ponytail for like 4 months, and I was so sick of it. If you know what amortization is, you know P&L. A rudimentary Google search of Microsoft's history of acquisitions could have told you this was a bad idea. To say you didn't know is an admission of willful ignorance. I think that's well stated, Peachy Creamy. I do. I think that's well stated. And I also think that right now, I think what you're seeing is an emboldened gaming industry. You're seeing developers speak out. And you're seeing others weigh in and basically say, yeah, the emperor has no clothes, man. Game Pass is not what people think it is. And you know, Xbox as a company is not who you think it is. How do I get the chair to sit in the middle? I can't get the right balance here. I don't like to be in front of the display. It's like it messes with my sense of balance. And I can't ever get it right. The new chair is like wider. We could talk our stuff, but is there going to be change? No. I mean, I think if there would have been more public outcry about the acquisition, I think you would have potentially seen a different outcome. Do you understand? I disagree that's well stated. It's too narrow of a view. What's too narrow of a view, Fuzzy? It's as if the day ABK and Bethesda became owned by Xbox, Microsoft viewed the incoming studios just as an expense, not a pool of talent. Well, and I think you used the right word there. Microsoft views them as an expense, not a talent. That's exactly right. Public outcry could have pressured the government. Yeah, I mean, are you really going to look at this right here? You don't think public outcry could have had an impact? You have 1.2 million people that have signed the Stop Killing Games initiative. Like, if people would have really rallied and been like, listen, historically speaking, this is a terrible idea. It's bad for consumers. It's bad for studios. It'll be bad for the games. It'll be bad all across the board. If you would have gotten enough people to kind of get around the fact that, like, hey, regulators, we don't think this is a good idea. We don't think this will be good for us. If you represent us, you should really, really look into this in a deeper way. Like, I guess my question would be, what do the regulators think about the results now? About a shrunken market, less product, less talent, less studios? Like, do they think that that's good for the consumer? FTC seemingly the only regulator that tried to put a stop to it. So CMA and the EU and all these other regulators, I'd love to sit them down and be like, do you think you made the right call? Do you think this acquisition led to betterment for the consumer, more choice? Do you think you did a good job protecting us? Do you think you did well on your watch? You know? Thousands of people and climbing, losing their jobs, less product. Do you think you did a good job protecting us? I don't think they did. I think the results of that acquisition and the level of layoffs that we're seeing and studios getting closed and games getting canceled, I think it's an indictment of all those regulators. I think it's an indictment. It's like, you did a bad job. You didn't consider the ramifications of what a company like this has done and will do with this much property, with this much operational cost. You did. They failed. They failed in their duty. They did. They failed in their duty to protect consumers, because now we're getting less stuff and less choice. That was the big argument, right? Oh, people deserve to have a choice. People, let us compete, put more choice, put more options into the market. We've now have a net loss of choice as consumers. It's an indictment of the regulators. They didn't do their due diligence to consider the ramifications of an acquisition of this cost and what it would do to consumer choice and what it would do to business infrastructure of that size. There was absolutely no way that Microsoft was going to spend that kind of money and just shoulder those operational costs in perpetuity. They were eventually going to have to trim, and that would result in consumers losing stuff. Oh, maybe we should also talk about the prices going up. Should we talk about that? Everybody was really angry with Nintendo. Xbox price increases was like a fart in the wind. It's like nobody, where's all that? Where's all the rage about that? You guys gonna make sure and spam drop the price in the next Xbox showcase? Did anybody make videos about that? Anybody call them greedy? Huh. It's interesting. It's weird. It's weird. It's almost like the rage is selective. It's almost like the anger and the self-righteousness is selective. But hey, Game Pass is profitable, right? Helldivers is coming to Xbox, so all will be well. Chris Dring caught up with Peter Moore to talk more about the launch of the Xbox 360 and how it did the impossible in taking PlayStation on and winning. Christo says it's just 4%. It's part of business. Not to invoke Starfield, but when the game of the generation game failed, that was the first red flag about the whole deal. I watched an interesting video this morning about Starfield, and he was essentially postulating that Starfield has been abandoned. The community feels very much jilted and ignored, and the consensus seems to be that Starfield's done. Like, they're not going to do anything with it anymore. I'm not saying that that's correct. That's just what the video was claiming. Game Pass is a failure. There's no denying that. I'm more concerned about what Sony will do when there's no competition. Will Sony put their first-party games on PC day and date after this? Maybe. No. First of all, Trill, get out the count. That's a non sequitur. So that doesn't logically follow that if Xbox is not competition, then Sony's going to put their games on PC day and date. I don't feel there's no logical connection there. You're welcome to make a logical connection. I don't see one. I don't see why they would change their approach with PC development to parallel to day and date simply because there is a competitor who has shifted into a publisher role. I don't see a logical connection there. So you're going to have to make that connection for me. The other thing I will say is Sony really hasn't had competition from Xbox in a long time, and they've continued to drive what I believe makes me a fan of theirs, which is excellence in first-party studio design and prioritizing their console first. Also, I think what Maloon is saying is helpful. PlayStation competes with their last release. I hate hearing that. I don't feel Sony and Xbox have been competing for quality even in the PS4 gen. Yeah. You also have to consider that Sony is competing with Leviathan third-party titles. I mean, they got GTA 6 coming. This is the video and channel, and props to the guy that made this video. It's a high-quality video. I will not react to it because it's not old enough. AVV Gaming only has 50,000 subscribers, so this view count is very impressive. When you have a view count that is 4 times your sub size, that's very impressive. That would be like me having a video with 250,000 views. That would be absolutely incredible for that to happen. I think some of my most viewed content is in the 100,000s. So this is very, very impressive. And it's a well-built video. And it's called Why Bethesda Abandoned Starfield. 18 minutes long. I encourage you to watch it. We can always loop back, and I can do a reaction to this tomorrow. I wait for a video to be wait, hang on. It is old enough. July 6th. Today's July 8th. I always wait for a video to be 2 days old before I react to it. We don't do a lot of reaction content, but you guys have been asking for more of it. Oh, on the subject of Stop Killing Games, if we get onto the subject of Stop Killing Games, I also have an interview that I would like to react to you guys with. And this one is Tom Bilyeu? Is that his name? So this one's well within reason. This is 3 weeks old. I wanted to react to some of the statements here from Ross because I think Ross is well aware of some of the entanglements and challenges that they're going to be facing with the Stop Killing Games initiative with respect to like copyright and stuff. So I've got a couple of timestamps here as well that I'd be happy to react to. Flex your eyebrows and go true. It's true. No. What's his one thing that he always does? I can't. I've been watching his content lately, but just in headphones, so I don't get to see all the mannerisms that Zach does. Lona, you were in the middle of talking about why there is always a counter narrative when bad news. You got interrupted. Thanks for bringing me back. This is just something that I've noticed. So no matter how dire it gets, there's always this like counter narrative. It seems too orchestrated for me to ignore. It just feels too orchestrated for me to ignore. It seems as though people are warned ahead of time. Like the Helldivers porting announcement, I don't think that was accidental. I think Microsoft, they navigated that rather expertly. They knew that that week was going to be terrible, and they had that plotted out. And they said, yeah, well, the Helldivers 2 announcement will be a nice big distraction. And then the Game Pass narrative hits, and what happens? All of a sudden, Chris Dring has sources reaching out and saying, oh, no, Game Pass is profitable even if you include loss of sales. And it's like, again, that just feels like you're running some kind of a weird counter narrative. It's almost immediate. Look how fast that had happened with him. It's like within the day of the tweet going viral. I don't know. Let me get these timestamps for Stop Killing Games interview. It's 6:19 and 16:31. Okay, so let me go to 6:19. This is another topic that we're covering here, and I think this is important because again, I think Ross does a good job here of acknowledging some of the potential entanglements that they're trying to avoid. Okay.
I mean, 2 aspects to that. One, they wouldn't be gaining any new intellectual property rights beyond what was sold. It's just that they wouldn't be able to have those taken back from them. I said in the comment, if you buy a Grand Theft Auto disc, you don't own the rights to the Grand Theft Auto franchise. You can just run that game for you or, in your living room or something. And that's it. For the security aspects, there are ways of doing this. I can give some suggestions, though we're not actually mandating any one way for 2 reasons. One is that actually could run afoul of existing copyright law. If I say, no, you have to release the server binaries or you have to release your source code, that could interfere with other laws. So
now, the reason he's saying this is because the guy that's interviewing him brought up the exact same thing that I brought up yesterday with you guys. I said, well, what if somebody's building an MMO and they have a crazy cool breakthrough with technology for like game logic? So you have the, enemies aggroing in a particular way, or the way a town operates, or the way, procedural generation happens with animals or plant life or something. And let's say you came up with really cool proprietary tech that you leveraged in your MMO, but when your MMO has to go end of life, you're sort of like, oh, well, we don't necessarily want to hand this over and give that away. As he's saying, that could then run into conflict with intellectual property law, where you're suddenly requiring somebody to hand something over that would then harm their intellectual property, right? So Ross is acknowledging that, but I think this is one of the significant challenges for Stop Killing Games, is that if you have an MMO coming end of life, they've got to basically figure out a way to hand over private servers without inadvertently harming their own copyright. They have to be able to do that. They have to be able to basically thread that needle, which is possible, but you're also asking them at that point in time to potentially then remove those aspects of the game, which means the version of the game you'd be getting might be different, and they would have to, alter it. And he talks about that later, about having to rip things out. We'll get to that in a moment. I'll pause the music. I didn't realize it was going to be louder than
So what we're doing is we're focusing on the end outcome where, okay, the game just has to be in a working state, and it's up to the developer or the publisher how that works best for them. And we're also not asking for necessarily 100% of all features, too. If they can give you
See, so this is where it gets a little gray, because listen what he says.
95% of the game, but then including something like matchmaking is going to be a nightmare. They can cut that out, and it's a reasonably playable standard.
So again, if you're not getting all of the features, what percentage is acceptable? Like, this starts to get really gray and a little bit messy, and it's like, well, if they have to remove features or things that they feel are like proprietary to their own technology, that they feel like, we have a right to protect this, but we're being sort of compelled by the law to hand over private servers or to enable the public to do private servers because we're end of life, we're ending support, you're now asking that company to spend more time and resources in order to do that, right? In the end life of the game, they're now having to spend money and bandwidth to essentially do that. To essentially, like, we got to pull stuff out. And again, Ross says, you don't have to give us all the features. You give us like 95 or something. This is something that would have to be then negotiated, discussed with the law, the people writing the law. Like, to what degree, what percentage of features are required? Because you guys know as well as I know what would happen. A lot of these companies would give you some crap version of the game that's been stripped down to nothing. And they're like, well, there you go. There are your private servers. We're end of life. We're out of here. And you get some bastardized version of the game that doesn't even really represent the product. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if you force companies to do this, you may not even like the results that you get because they're just going to hand you some weird version of the game that's had so many things stripped out of it. And yes, he talks about how it's not retroactive, Zubair, but again, we're still talking about future games that are in development right now. So if you're developing an MMO and you have a breakthrough and you have these really cool things you can do server side that nobody else is doing, and that becomes a central identity point of the game, like you've got to play this MMO, they do this really cool thing with enemies or procedural generation or something, and that company feels like they have to protect that, and then that's removed from the game when they give you the private server version or whatever, you're not actually achieving what they're aiming at. You're not really preserving the game. I think that the perpetual live service private server aspect of this is the most complicated, because as Ross admits, it can run into conflict with copyright law if you're not careful. You're asking them to essentially hand over their stuff to a degree so that you can perpetually play it if somebody's running private servers. So that was one aspect that I appreciated Ross's candor, and I was like, okay, he's acknowledging there are some pretty significant challenges here. And then further in the video, he starts talking about ripping things out, which touches on this. So this is 1631 in the video.
I was actually surprised how much can be wound down. That's for all the stuff that might be on like an Amazon Web Services or Google Stacks. A whole lot of that isn't part of having the part that would be needed for end of life game. I mean, for end of life build, because those are about either running the business or you're talking about the cost, maybe having up to like 10 million simultaneous players or something. That's where the costs really spike. So you could get rid of stuff like cross-region save, anti-cheat, payments, analytics, 99% uptime, crash reports, voice chat, failover. So you can just rip out all this stuff that you do need those online servers for, and just kind of give them the shell that still runs the game, and instead of, supporting thousands of people, it might support, 20 or 40 or something.
And here is, again, this is where, again, I think this is one of the more complicated aspects of the movement, because you're talking about ripping significant portions out of the game, basically. You're talking about ripping features out. You're talking about ripping functionality out and getting, as he describes it, like just sort of the shell of the game. Depending on the game, I don't know how acceptable people would take that. I don't know if consumers would be like, oh, we basically have the shell of a game. They ripped basically everything out. Like, I don't know if that, again, would be acceptable to consumers. And how do you write that into law? How do you basically say you have to give some version of the game at some point in time? Because, again, you know that the businesses would take the path of least resistance and they would give you some crap vanilla shell that has nothing in it. So it's like, well, yeah, they gave you a perpetual version, but what's the actual point at that point if you don't even have really the game at its end, right? The other thing he's describing is costly. So as a game, let's imagine a game that is in its death throes and it's like, well, we're running out of money, we've got to shut this down. While they're planning end of life and they're still trying to pay their staff, they're still trying to keep the lights on, they're having to spend money to, as he says, rip all this stuff out. So if the legislation passes, this is the one area that will be potentially the most impactful. It will be potentially cost prohibitive for some studios to even make games like this, which you could view that as a good thing or a bad thing depending on where you are. I think perpetual access to single-player games where online features can be disabled is a far easier win. I think the perpetual access to live service games and private servers and asking companies to like rip things out, I think that gets a lot more complex. I think that's going to be harder for them to argue. None of this is a consumer's problem. Well, it certainly is your problem if you want perpetual access to a game and the version that you get perpetual access to is crappy. Like, that's not really a victory for you. Like, if you really, really love some MMO and the law requires them to give you private server access in perpetuity, well, not them giving it, they hand it off, right? And then some college buddies that set up a server, but then the version of the game you're playing has been gutted and all the stuff's gone that the company considered proprietary. Well, that does concern you because then you've not really won a victory there. You've been given some version of the game that's kind of not even worth it. You're preserving something that's not even really worth preserving at that point if you get some other version of the game. If you get perpetual access to a single player game, huge win for the consumer. You bought it, they can't take it away from you. I fully support that. If you get perpetual access to a live service game because they hand out private servers, I fully support that. It sounds like what you might end up getting is some other version of the game because the studio is just required to give you perpetual access. As Ross said, they don't even have to give us all the features. They can take a lot of that stuff out. If they take out some of those features, you may end up with a version that's not even really worth playing. You're like, well, all the stuff's gone. Like all the things that made the game so cool. Because Ross acknowledges there can be tension here with IP, copyright law. There's copyright law that will protect these companies, and then there's this law they're proposing that would say, hey, we want access to that game in perpetuity. So I think it's well intended. I think Ross has done a great job doing interviews and being very candid about this is a challenge. This is going to be hard. This isn't, it's not like, I don't ever get the vibe from him that he's like trying to oversimplify it. But I do think there are elements of this that are not simple at all. And there are some people in the public that think it's very simple. It's like, oh, just give us private servers. And it's like, it could be more complicated than that. And you could end up again with some version of the game that you don't even care about at that point. I feel it would show the company's true colors and would show us who to avoid buying from in the future. This is true. That would be a sign that you wouldn't really want to trust them in the future. But a lot of the times, you have to remember something. If an MMO has gone for a very long time and is entering end of life, and the number of people still playing, and then the number of people that would engage with that private version of the game would be a lot smaller than the general public. So it likely would not have that great amount of damage to the company that you might think that it would. Does that make sense? Like you typically have, like what happened with the crew, the number of people who were still engaging with the crew was such a small number, it hasn't really harmed, I don't think. Well, Ubisoft's been harmed in a lot of other ways, so that's not a great example. But I don't necessarily know. The reasons that people don't like Ubisoft are more about other things. The number of people that don't like Ubisoft because of the crew is probably a lot smaller number because there were just less people paying attention at that point in time. Now, it made the news and it went into YouTube videos, so then people were adding that to the bonfire of reasons to hate Ubisoft. But the average consumer that doesn't like Ubisoft probably has no clue about what happened with the crew. That's a great example. Ubi's business practices created a reputation that people remember. Right, it was one more log in the fire, but if you ask the general public why they don't like Ubisoft, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them have no idea about what happened with the crew because there were so few people playing it in the end. And the same would ring true of an MMO. You'd have so few people playing it at the end that people would say, well, yeah, I don't even know what you're talking about. Their next MMO I'm really, really excited for. And you'd be like, oh, but they gave us private server versions and it was really bad. And they'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I stopped playing that game so many years ago. So Ross is still encouraging people to sign. He's still encouraging people to, if you're a European citizen, he said, don't sign it if you can't actually sign it. He's like, don't go in and put bad signatures. He's calling for more signatures because there will be a percentage of signatures that are rejected. So if you want to support Stop Killing Games, go to stopkillinggames.com and do that. And then continue to, go watch the interviews if you want more information. I think he's doing a great job. He admits in some of these areas he doesn't understand all the tech, and he's talked to developers and people that have helped him understand the tech better. As he said, there is potential tension here with copyright law, and they're trying to think through how can we argue that winsomely to make it seem as though this would not be an unreasonable request of a company to essentially hand over private servers. So that's just a quick reaction to some of the things he had to say in that interview. That was Stop Killing Games. Ross Scott responds to my concerns as a game dev, Tommy Bilyeu. And if we make this content later, that link will be below. And then the other video you guys were wanting me to react to is this 18-minute one about why Bethesda abandoned Starfield. So if you guys haven't hit like yet, be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to do that. Let me go back. Mash was saying some things in the old conversation that I wanted to acknowledge. Mash said, my understanding is that Microsoft Game Pass cost equals money in from monthly cost of third-party deals on Game Pass, loss of potential sales on Xbox because Game Pass is there, total cost of game, total sales, that is L&P. That means they assume the games they make will be recouped by sales across all plats, so no intention to keep first parties exclusive at all to all their first-party games. I think the only problem with that, Mash, is that Game Pass has been around for a really long time. So when they were crunching the numbers of like Hi-Fi Rush, for example, they were crunching all that and examining all that before they were basically a third-party publisher, which is why I think a lot of people are questioning how exactly they're calculating the profitability of Game Pass. Nick says, what do you think of the chronological mode added to TLU 2? I don't even know what that is. How would you measure loss of sales? That's an abstract imaginary number that you can't really verify. They can probably do market research and projections with based off of pre-orders what sales could be for a game of that size, that notoriety. I mean, they could make an estimate maybe of what they would have sold. They can make an approximation, I would guess. Solemn says, I don't think companies should have to put in the work to make offline servers, but I think they should allow the consumer to do so with no legal pursuit of copyright claims. Yeah, I covered that this morning where the lobbyists were saying that like the companies would be liable for private servers. And I'm like, no, they would not be. You would literally hand them off and say, listen, we're not liable for anything that goes on, in these private servers. Okay, so this just got announced. Experience The Last of Us Part 2 in a whole new way with chronological mode, a rearranged version of the game that lets you play story in the chronological order. Available now for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered via patch 2.1.0. Wait, so you wouldn't bounce around and have all the weird pacing? Huh. I wonder... Oh my gosh, that's got to be a very different experience. Because that was one of my main criticisms of The Last of Us Part 2 is I thought the pacing was very frustrating. I didn't like how they did that. These features were recently updated on the Assassin's Creed Black Flag Steam page. I'm certain these are new additions for the remake, since none of these options are currently available in the original game. Last I checked, there's no difficulty option, manual save, mouse-only option, and many others. Okay, so it looks like the Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake is getting closer and closer. Can you guys on YouTube take a really, really quick second and make sure you have pressed the like button? Let's go for 300 likes. We're one super chat away from the goal. And we're doing well as well. We're a slight ahead of pace. We needed to end today at 200. We're already at 200 on the member count. 500 unlocks a Friday night stream with my wife. We have a really good time with it. This week will be, I don't know what we'll have her play this week. We'll have to think of what we should have her play this week. The Altars sold 280,000 copies. Good for them. That's probably excellent for a studio and a game that size. I hate that the fun of the game is not knowing so much stuff and figuring it out as you go, being in the unknown and piecing it together. I'll have to try it out. It's probably there for replay value, Maloon. I don't think I would ever encourage anybody to play the game chronologically their first time through. Have her play Game of Thrones, King's Road. It's time for some MMO action. If the games don't own their own servers, what is there to be handed over? You just got to tell Microsoft they got to hand over servers because the game shut down. No. D, nobody's saying you hand over servers. You empower the users to do their own servers. That doesn't even guarantee you could play the game, by the way. They could say, here's all the info. Here's how you set up public servers. Okay, well, somebody has to get that, download that, set that up, and run that. Okay? Somebody might not do it. You might have some college buddies that do it, and then eventually they decide they don't want to pay for it anymore. Yeah, you just can't make it impossible. That's the point that people are making. You make it to where the game is just gone, snapped into dust. It's like, well, no one can touch it or ever play it again because you EOL'd it. Let's just take Anthem as an example. January of next year, Anthem will be unplayable. No one will be able to play the game. Now, this law would say, it's not retroactive, but let's imagine that the law was in place before that happened. The law would state, the law that they're proposing would state, you need to empower anyone who purchased this to set up their own private servers so they can keep playing. That's what they're proposing. They're not proposing ongoing support. They're not proposing ongoing liability or servers. Just empower the user to set up their own servers. That's what they're asking for. They're also saying, you can't take away a game that has like single player functionality simply because your servers are going down. Why not Sony or Xbox just do that as a third party? Just do what as a third party? Offer servers? Because it's very expensive. Or just make an offline mode? It depends on the game loot. You can't just make an offline mode for like an MMO because so much runs server side. You can't be like, yeah, just play offline. If there's a bunch of game logic running on the servers themselves, and you can't just switch them to peer-to-peer either. That's not possible. If the entire game has been coded to operate on dedicated servers, you can't just like flip a switch and make it peer-to-peer. This is something that Destiny has dealt with over the years. Anytime the question comes up of, why don't you guys switch to dedicated servers? They're like, we'd have to rebuild the entire game. The entire game is built for peer-to-peer. We'd have to rebuild everything. Every instance, every strike, every planet, every mission, every adventure, all of it would have to be rebuilt so that certain things would be running server side instead of running on, whoever the host of that instance is. So, again, that would be an exorbitant cost at the request of the developer, and that's not what Ross, that's not what the Stop Killing Games movement's asking for. They're not saying, hey, can you turn your MMO into peer-to-peer? Or, hey, can you turn your MMO into an offline game? They're not asking that. They're saying, can you empower us to set up our own private servers so the game can live on and people can continue accessing it if they want to? Again, they would need somebody to run the private servers in order for that to work. Consoles ruin gaming forever. I mean, there are brain dead takes that I've read, and that's got to be one of them. I mean, that's absolutely brain dead to say. Yeah, you know, the birth of Nintendo and the PlayStation 1 and the original Xbox, it ruined gaming for forever. Some of my best experiences, some of my most enjoyable experiences in gaming were on a console. But yeah, they've ruined gaming forever. This weird ideal of like, if gaming would have just remained, what, PC only, it would have been so much better. Like, what? Ginger says someone would need to pay for the server, and that's fine. That's user choice. You're basically leaving it up to the market. You're saying, hey, you guys, you lose access to our servers. It's almost like, you know, it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. It's like, listen, you can't stay here anymore. You can't use our servers anymore. You got to set up your own. Console should have died with the Dreamcast, the last one worth buying. Yo, Darren, thanks for 13 months. Thanks for helping my transition into retirement. Well, congrats on your retirement, and thanks for continuing to support what I do here. 203. 28 to 7 on the day. The question I like to see, says Ginger, is would they let us sell a sub to support the server? Like, if I wanted to host my own server, could I monetize it? I'd vote yes. I think that would be fine to do. Man, that gets complicated, doesn't it, Ginger? That gets super complicated because one could argue you're making money off of somebody else's property. I don't know if you could do that. That would get really, really complicated because, yeah, I think what Zubair is saying, I think as soon as it's EOL'd, like commercially, you could do the, hey, support our Patreon to keep things going, but I don't know if you could require it. You could say, hey, if you want to support what we do voluntarily, like a tip, you can use our Patreon or our PayPal to support what we do here. But I don't know if you could be like, yeah, we're going to charge for access to, you know, Final Fantasy 14 private servers. Let's say like 10 years from now, FF14 is no more. I don't know if you could be out here commercially, like sort of basically like profiting from that game's property simply because you run the servers. You know what I'm saying? I think that really, really gets into muddy territory. Yo, D with 4 months. Another renewal on the Bobby. Thank you so much. 204. I appreciate you so much. Reckless says, you guys are slowly stepping them towards never making another MMO ever. Ginger says, you could if the law says you could. If the company shuts the game down and someone picks that up, Patreon or PayPal is fine. You're essentially arguing for public domain of IP simply because they don't do servers anymore. Man, oh man. Copyright lawyers are waking up in a cold sweat right now. I don't know. You're essentially arguing public domain. That is a fast version of public domain. To be like, well, we're not supporting the game anymore, and as soon as they stop supporting the game, essentially becomes public domain. And the difficulty there is it truly public domain if they keep making Final Fantasy games or if they keep making games within the franchise? That gets really complex. There is a cost, being able to recoup the cost to host the server. Right, but that's voluntary. That's voluntary. That's voluntary. You're voluntarily setting that up on your own. Making it a commercial endeavor, I think, complicates things. It's not public domain. It's not like the public would be able to profit from it legally. Well, that's what Ginger is saying is like, imagine an MMO shuts down tomorrow and they let you set up your own private servers. Ginger's saying, well, let's let people monetize that. And I'm like, I don't know. I think that gets really complicated. I'm fully in support of, if possible, letting people set up their own servers so that the game can be enjoyed, in perpetuity. But letting people then make money off of something that another company created, I think you're getting into really, 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 really muddy waters. Good luck trying to sue an EU company in the U.S. EU companies don't fall under U.S. law. Read my last message. Dirge says, some games already have privately owned and monetized servers. I own a Team Fortress 2 server to this day, and it makes me money. Right, okay. So, but that was that company's choice, Dirge. Right? We're talking about this being something that they would have no legal repercussions to stop. If that company is okay with it, that's their choice. But I also think another company should be able to say, we are not okay with that. We don't want you monetizing our property in perpetuity. I think a company should have the right to say no to that, to be like, hang on a minute. We are completely willing to comply and hand over private servers so you can keep playing. But we are not okay with our property being monetized by the public in that way. I think they would have a right to say no. Unless they set up some kind of a royalty fee where like a percentage of all revenue that you generate goes to them or something, and then maybe they'd be okay with it then. It gets really complex if they're trying to do a sequel as well. You're out here running old servers and making money off of the first game. They're out here trying to get people to come play the second game, and you're actively now you're actively competing against them within the marketplace, and you're making money doing so. I think that gets really complicated. I do. I like consumers having their purchases protected. You're turning it into a way to make monetary gain, which is a separate discussion altogether. A consumer being protected and being like, hey, I bought this. I would like to keep getting access to it. Great. Hey, I bought this. I want to keep getting access to it. And I also want to make money monetizing it and providing servers. Okay, you just switched categories. That's a completely separate discussion. And I again think the danger of a lot of this initiative is if you overreach, you're going to get slapped for it. Lawmakers are going to be like, this is not what this is about. This doesn't sound like you want consumers protected. It sounds like you guys are trying to make money off of games after they shut down, which is not what the initiative is about. I don't even know if Ross would agree with that. I think he would say, this is about stop killing games. This is about protecting games from being shut down. This is not about empowering users to make money off of them. To be fair, clear, I didn't say profit. I said cover the cost of the server. Yeah, but at that point, then you'd have to have some way of legitimizing your prices. You could say, well, I have to charge you guys $50 a month because there's only 8 of you buying and playing, and the only way I can cover my server costs is I got to charge you each $50 a month. You see what I'm saying? Who do you answer to at that point for your costs and how much you charge people? Taking away Borderlands 2 to sell Borderlands 4 would be awful. No, Loot. I was talking about like an MMO. I'm not saying they take away a game in order to sell you a new game, but actively competing against commercial endeavors of the consumer because you're legally obligated to hand over private server access, and you're like, here is MMO, Dragon Fighter 1. And then they take all that money and they're really excited. They invested in the Dragon Fighter 2. And after the game's been out for 8 years, they launched Dragon Fighter 2. They have end-of-life plans for Dragon Fighter 1. Why? Budgetary costs, right? They have to shift their production costs and server infrastructure to the new game. So they basically outline end-of-life. They enable you to do private servers, and then you're out here selling access to the old game, which makes you an active competitor in the market against the sequel. That's what I was arguing. It's like, I think that gets really complex. Empowering users to set up their own servers and play, totally fine. Letting consumers then make money off of that, I think, is a different subject entirely. Now you're talking about a commercial endeavor, not a consumer being protected. Those are two different things. Check my last. Hang on. Brett says, You would need a statute of limitations. If another game under the IP doesn't release within 10 years, the servers can be monetized. I was wondering if you were going to do that, Stone Spire. Stone Spire gifts a single member. He's trying to bait the 20 bomb. We'll see if he can get any of the big boys to do it. The next milestone is 325. And let's see if I can't help you out, Stone. I owe you guys my own. Let's see if I can't help you. Gosh, we're getting an echo. Hang on, I got my PC unmuted. I owe you guys 5 over here on YouTube. So let me stoke the fires and see if we can't wake up the gifters. Stone Spire wants that 20 bomb. Purple, you can steal it right now with a 20 bomb, and so can you, YouTube. Let's see it. Does Purple ever win? They have won. Yeah, they won like a Friday ago, I think. Lona, would you be mad if I tried to monetize a server of Swordman? And Lone Wolf makes it a little bit easier, and he gives a 5 bomb, and he says, hey, why don't we all link arms and just do a 5 bomb train to the next milestone and gets us to 210. Thank you so much. We're now 15 away. Thank you so much, Mr. Lone Wolf. If you guys get a gifted, consider paying it forward and gift to somebody else, or upgrade to Member Plus so that you can make space in the gifted pool for others. Some of you guys get a gifted every single month and you need it. Some of you guys get a gifted every single month and you don't need it. So consider paying it forward to others. I was cleaning up my ChatGPT history and the Swordman art came up. The meme needs to come back. We need to make some merch. We really do. We really do. We need to make some merch. Ginger says 100% for sure people will monetize servers if Stop Killing Games is successful. The question is, perhaps that should be defined now. Yeah, again, I think the risk of the movement and the initiative, Ginger, is to ask for too much. I don't think you want to ask for too much. Because what's going to happen is, you know, your lawmakers are going to be like, wait a minute, this doesn't sound like you want consumer protection. This sounds like opportunistic. You know what I mean? Because like governing bodies could look at this one of two ways. They could be like, hey, consumers are not protected here. We need to act. That's what you want. You want them to feel a sense of urgency of like consumers are not protected. That's why I argued in my video about how gamers want refunds. I think that's an easier front to win. I think you could get American and European lawmakers to agree that we are not empowered right now to return digital goods, and that is a lack of protection. That's a lack of consumer protection. I can buy a game like Mind's Eye, feel like I got completely ripped off, and I have no repercussions. Oh, you can get refunds from Xbox if you do this, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Everybody has different experiences with that. There are people that have good experiences getting refunds from PlayStation and Xbox, and there are people that don't. There are also people that get one, and then they can't get another one for like 6 months. That's not consumer protection, okay? So I think that's your easiest front. I think as soon as you start bringing in like, well, we should be able to monetize the servers and da-da-da-da, I think you're going to potentially wreck the boat. You're going to make everybody think that something else is going on. And if those suspicions and those skepticisms rise, a lawmaker might say, yeah, this doesn't seem like it's about protecting consumers anymore. I agree, keep things focused. However, I'm just for the sake of discussion bringing up something that for sure would happen. I think that would certainly be a ripple effect, that there would be people that would take an interest in like, hey, I'd love to run servers for this, boys, but I can't afford it on my own. I need help. I need compensation. Somebody put Kickstarter in the chat. That might be the way that you would have to do it. You'd have to run a Kickstarter campaign every 18 months and be like, listen, this is how much funding we need. We need this and this and this to keep the servers going, to pay for the internet, to pay for blah, blah, blah. You know, and you'd have people that want to keep playing Kickstart it and support it and pay for it. And then they wouldn't be paying a monthly fee they would essentially be kickstarting the endeavor to run the game on private servers. And if you have people that are good at coding and can mod the game and do updates and do content, you could also include that, if that's possible. Lone Wolf with a 33-month VIP. 3 months away from 3 years. Crazy how long it's been. Also, as I say, love this community. Thanks for everything, Lona. You are the best. Thank you so much. And that bumps the line by 1. Digital returns should be held to the same standards as physical since they are the same product and there are too many resources to find out information about how game before purchasing. I completely disagree with you. I don't think it's on the consumer to become Sherlock Holmes and make sure that a game doesn't suck before buying it. I think if they watch a trailer and the game is advertising a certain amount of quality and experience, I think they should be able to buy the game, and if they don't feel like it's up to those quality and it's not running in the way that they were promised, they should be able to get their money back. You don't do that with any other product. You're not like, hey, you shouldn't have purchased this vacuum cleaner. You should have went and read reviews and watched an influencer use it in their home, and you should have checked Amazon before buying it. So that's on you, sucker. It's like, what are you talking about? Anytime a consumer buys a product that's below the quality they assume they were going to be getting either from the advertising or what I would consider to be is just a reasonable expectation of function, I think they're in their right to return it. And buying a game that crashes, has bugs, has glitches, things don't work properly, you should be able to this is below standard. I should be able to get my money back. Also, I played it for an hour and I think it sucks. It's not fun. You should be able to do that. You should just return it. Get your money back. I don't think that's unreasonable. With the way that games can ship, I think you should be able to get your money back. Okay, Game Logic is adding some context here. I appreciate this. He's always very thoughtful. He stops by here every now and again. And so I said the original statement was about the first-party cost not being included. Clarifying about lost sales feels like a red herring. Now, Game Logic's clarifying here. That is because his original post was about first-party costs were not included, but Gamer Twitter and the internet ran with lost sales, which is why he is correcting based on the lost sales topic. That's Twitter and internet's F-up in my opinion, not his. He should have never needed to say this first thing. People should have never assumed that Game Pass carried the cost of game development. I think that's exactly right. Him saying that part out loud, I think went viral because people were like, they've been saying it's profitable this entire time and they're not including costs of the games. Let's see here. If you guys are enjoying the conversation and the dialogue today, and yeah, I agree with what Ross said. Do you think we have no chance of changing things? We have lobbyists coming out against us. Yeah, I mean, the fact that the lobbyist group is trying to push against the initiative means the initiative is making a splash. I agree with that. I think Ross is correct in saying that. But yeah, it's super helpful when we have a good like ratio. It actually hurts us when we have a bad like ratio. So make sure you guys are doing that. We have a very, very bad ratio right now. We had over 550 concurrent viewers, and then we entered into the second half of the stream. We have dropped very rapidly, and that's always indirect, not permanently. Like it's like, oh, you're screwed. It's like, yeah, it looks like the video is not performing well. So make sure when you're hanging out, you're going through that ritual, because it was very, very low today for the amount of people that were here. He's 100% correct. They've formed a lobbying. Well, they've not formed a lobbying group. That group that's what they're there for. This group already existed, but they made a post about it, right? So they didn't form this group overnight. They did this they posted a response because the movement got 1 million signatures. Well, now it's over 1 million. It's like 1.2. You were off on the details. Yeah. So basically, what happened was I'll show you the quote. The company, it's not a company. I'm sorry. It's a lobbyist group. They posted about it, and they said, let me scroll down here. They said the following. They said, we appreciate, let me just enter this down so it's not broken up page to page. They said, we appreciate the passion of our community. However, the decision to discontinue online services is multifaceted, never taken lightly, and must be an option for companies when an online experience is no longer commercially viable. This is, and I've said this a lot today, but it's just one of those days where this is happening. People are using red herrings. This is a huge red herring. The movement was never saying you're not allowed to take your games offline. You have to leave them online all the time. So this is just distracting from what this is really about, right? They continue, we understand that it can be disappointing for players, but when it does happen, the industry ensures that players are given fair notice of the prospective changes in compliance with local consumer protection laws. It is a giant waste of text because the movement's not saying anything about like, well, you can't shut your games down, okay? So then they talk about private servers. Private servers are not always a viable alternative option for players, as the protections that we put in place to secure players' data, remove illegal content, and combat unsafe community content would not exist and would have rights holders be liable. This, again, is completely idiotic and stupid. Anybody who's lobbying for these companies should be embarrassed that like this was typed up. This is idiotic. You would not be liable. Like, I can't believe this is somebody who actually like lobbies for companies, like to say something that's so like bankrupt and stupid. If you hand off private servers and you end of life support, you are no longer liable for what happens to people who engage with those private servers. This right here is like, if I worked for this lobbying group, I'd be like, who typed that up? You're an idiot. You're fired. Like, you don't even know what you're talking about. In addition, many titles are designed from the ground up to be online only. In effect, these proposals would curtail developer choice by making these video games prohibitively expensive to create. This point is actually one that they could make, and they could make this point rather well, but they've stood it on top of a house of cards. Like, their argumentation at this point has been dadgum terrible. So it's like, well, there's no cost-prohibitive examples that you're giving. The cost-prohibitive examples that you'd have to give is, this would completely change the structure of development and make it to where smaller studios or more mid-sized studios would not be able to then build or develop their game or bring their game to market. Right? But they're making it about, keeping the servers on, and they'd be liable, and it's like, well, no, none of these things are true, so you haven't given good examples of how this would be cost prohibitive. There are people that tried to defend loot boxes. What they called it, surprise mechanics. That's where that meme came from. Wasn't that when loot boxes were being negotiated or debated, I should say? Yeah, surprise mechanics. All right, I tell you what we're gonna do. I'm thinking. Thank you, Tenor Dude, for 46 months. I appreciate it. It feels like the movement's basically asking that an oil company be forced to give up their rights to pump on a well that they've built if they ever stop pumping that well. No. That's not it at all. They're allowed to shut the well down and no longer use it and no longer give access to it. They're just allowing other people to spin up their own. So basically like, hey, we have to shut the servers down. We no longer are going to be paying for the servers and the infrastructure to allow you guys to play, but we're going to hand off this here. We're going to update the game and you can set up your own private servers. So that would mean somebody would have to invest in their own server stack, in their own, setup somewhere so that somebody can then log in to that private server that is now no longer funded or operated by the company. So, how much different is profiting from private servers from third-party used game sales? I don't think that's the same because that's like a retail exchange, right? I think that's a different animal. No, there's been no confirmation of a Nintendo Direct. Yeah, again, I think letting people monetize private servers is getting you into different territory. You're no longer talking about protecting the consumer. You're creating a commercial enterprise. You're saying, well, yeah, GameStop does it, right? You can go trade in the game and then they can sell it to somebody else. Well, yeah, because what GameStop is doing is they're purchasing that game from the consumer, the thing, and they're saying, we're taking the risk of doing that, and then we're going to turn around and sell it, okay? That's not the same as ongoing monetary gain from servers that are running property that's not yours. I don't think those are equal. I don't know if that's an equivalency. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm saying I think it would be better to leave it up to the company. If the company is okay with you profiting off of your own private servers because they've end-of-life the game, I think that would be totally fine if they're okay with that. I don't think they should be legally required to just surrender their rights to say, well, now that we're shutting the game down, we're surrendering our property to the public to make money off of it. I think that's going to get you into territory where copyright law is going to come in and say, no, you cannot compel a company to do that. They have a right to protect their property, and they have a right to say that you can't commercialize something that they've made. You have a right to access it because you paid for it. You don't have a right to make money off of it. Would be, I think, the way that the copyright law lawyers would argue. Those are different categories. The movement's about protecting consumers, not giving consumers commercial opportunities. Those are, again, I think those are completely separate categories. You start conflating those categories and you're really going to confuse what the movement and the initiative's all about. It's about protecting consumers, not empowering them to be opportunistic and to make money. So, it's like the refunds thing, right? Somebody said, oh, well, I should be able to sell my game digitally to another person. You know, make an aftermarket for me. Next gen Nintendo Switch is never happening. This guy says too late. It happened. You Sony pony. You think the Switch 2 is next gen? Okay, Turbo. Good golly. Who says the next Switch 2 is next gen? This guy in my comments said it. I argue that you're never going to get a next gen Switch because of their sort of goals and aspirations as a company. I don't think they care about it. And this guy says, oh, it happened, you Sony pony. And I'm like, you think the Switch 2 is next gen? Dear Lord. It's a massive upgrade from the original, but next gen? Yeah, I've seen some wild takes about the Switch 2, and that one's That one's climbing to the top of the pile, you know. That is climbing to the top of the pile. Guys, can we get 10 more likes? Good golly, it's like pulling teeth to get likes these days. I don't know what the deal is, but boy, oh boy, is it hurting. Yeah, let's just do this. Let's just do this. Do. Boom, boom, boom. I needed a break anyway, and I've got stuff I got to do with Wu Chang. So I was going to try to push it, but I can't. I'm like dying in the chair here. You probably thought you meant no more Switch consoles? Oh, yeah. I mean, the video is obviously, if you listen to it, it's literally a short. It's literally a short. It's not that there won't be a Switch 2. It's that there won't be a next-gen Switch. Like, it's such a short video. Like, it's not that hard to understand. I'm talking about one that'll prioritize, like, next-gen features and next-gen performance. And I just said, I don't think you're ever going to see that. All right. I was going to try and push through and extend. I've got to take a quick break. I will be right back. All right. I was like, sometimes I just push through. I'm like, let's just keep going and pull up some more stuff to react to. And I can't. What the frick did you guys do while I was gone? You. Why did you wait? No one say anything. Let's sneak it in. The frick, man. I was like, dude, I gotta take a break. All right, so a 20 bomb and a 10 bomb and a 10 bomb. What is that, 40? Yeah, that is. That's 40. So 52. So I owe 10. Thank you so much. It's 77 to 7. Purple. Purple. The Switch 2 is barely better than a Steam Deck. They try to keep you in the chair. Oh man, I can't. I get to that certain point in the day where it's like, if we're maintaining and like viewership's good, I'll stay. I'm like, I'm not leaving because I understand what happens in a live stream if you get out of the chair. But when we're in that downward spiral and like I'm like begging for likes, I'm like, I'm getting out of the freaking chair, bro. I need a break. It's like we're in a symbiotic relationship, and sometimes this is the honest to goodness truth, and it's super unfortunate. When we have like a really good vibe stream for like 2 straight hours, we end up falling really fast because eventually YouTube runs the numbers and they're like, you had like almost 600 people here and you don't even have 300 likes, and we fall. I've noticed that like really, really good vibe streams, we fall really fast because I'm not saying, hey, make sure you're hitting like, hey, make sure you're doing that, because we're just talking. I blink and I'm like, oh my gosh, 2.5 hours have gone by. I haven't asked for likes, and we start to fall. On the days where it's a little more chill and I'm able to like regularly tell people to hit the like, we actually have more stable viewership. Like I've gone back and kind of looked. It's a really interesting experiment. It's really interesting how that functions on YouTube versus Purple. Purple's very different. Purple, that doesn't happen. If you're vibing and things are going well, it just keeps going up, and then it just sort of then slowly comes down. YouTube is more of like an expeditious drop if you're not like drawing attention to that. At least that's been my experience in the 5 years, is when we have very, very strong interaction, very, very high chat volume, and lots of good vibes, we don't get the likes because I'm too busy reading chat. Switch 2 is not next gen, especially when it's only built for Nintendo games. I can understand it where there are a lot more came from PlayStation and Xbox that could put near those. I can understand if there were a lot more that came from PlayStation and Xbox than H can put in near those consoles. Chat passes the vibe check, so it's profitable. That's a good callback. That's a good callback. That's right. It is a vibe. We're profitable because we pass the vibe checks. What's good, feed? See my last. People also perceive the phrase next gen as the next generation of hardware from the brand. Not defending him, though. He didn't watch or listen. Yeah, I think the short, I mean, we can watch the short. I think it makes it super, like, it's very, very explained. Like, if we go here and search. Let's do this. Let's see what I say. See a next-gen Nintendo platform? I don't think so, because if they're always beholden to the hybrid mobile model where you can take it with you or dock it, I don't think we'll ever see a next-gen Nintendo console. Yeah, you can tell by what I'm saying that you're not going to see a next-gen console. They're beholden to the hybrid, which means you're not going to get the power. The context of what I'm saying makes it clear that I'm talking about, like, the power and the performance of the device. That is like the shortest short ever, too. Like, it's 10 seconds long. Like, that's being a YouTuber in a nutshell. The guy couldn't even watch for 10 seconds to grapple with what I was saying. It's a 10-second video. The irony is it took him longer to type that than it would be to just listen to what I'm saying. And be like, oh, well, I mean, contextually it makes sense what he's saying. He's saying that we're never going to get next-gen power because he's talking about it always being beholden to the hybrid model, which the Switch 2 proves me correct that they went again with the hybrid model. So you don't get as much power. We got one, you Sony pony. Well, I bought 3, so I don't know what you're talking about. Oh. Hang on. Discrete GPUs with discrete memory on the desktop. It's really good for certain use cases. You're good. Oh, I'm stopping before I read any more. Loans exposed. Yeah, I got exposed on that short. It's 10 seconds long. It's the real deal. I was looking if there, I don't think there's been much that has happened in the news today. I'd like to see this on a video. Oh, right. Re-engagement sustained throughout. Yeah. Yeah, that's an upload. So that's like a different metric of measurement, but yeah. I wish I could color code my comments that Lono should stay away from. I mean, you guys go back and forth sometimes about stuff, and I like to look at chat, and I'm like, and I just don't know. I'm like, I don't know what they're doing, but they're deep in the throes of it, and then I just grab what somebody else is saying. It's like I need something that's more simplistic. What are my top 3 games? Probably Hellblade 1, Returnal, Tsushima, probably. Followed by, like, Sekiro would be up there. I don't know. All businesses are profitable if you don't add expenses. That's right. Yeah, you just don't add in the cost. I have imagined Microsoft execs rolling up the studio heads. Yo, we're not vibing with your fit. The only pass you get is a hard pass, ripping pepperonis. That's how they shut them down. That's how they shut. They hire like a TikTok influencer to go to the studio. Yeah, the Expanse game looks really cool. It does. Yeah, it looks like it's got a lot of potential. I mean, I think that fans of the game will, I'm sorry, fans of the show will be pleased. It's like what, like seasons 1 through I think the beginning of season 3, I believe is what they said. Yeah, the review embargo on the Soups hits at 3 o'clock today. What genre is it? I believe sci-fi action adventure. Osiris Reborn. Sci-fi action RPG. Oh no, I said RPG. They're gonna come for me. I don't know. Is there any kind of even simulated gameplay? Yeah, I think we get some simulated here. Yeah, this is all simulated. It's kind of like if you say that the weather's really hot and somebody that lives in warmer climate than you is going to show up and tell you what hot really is. The same thing happens if you say RPG. Somebody's going to show up and tell you what an RPG really is and why you can't say it. It's this. I don't make the rules. That's just the rule. Don't make the mistake of saying that it's hot outside, because somebody's going to pull up and be like, hey, you don't know hot. That's only if you're British. No, it happens here in America too. Unless you live literally in, like, Satan's butt crack, you're not allowed to say that it's hot. You're like, I'm sorry that I said that it's hot outside. I apologize. I'm sorry that I said the letters RPG about a game that is not an RPG. I'm so sorry. They're already writing twitlongers. I said RPG. I said RPG. They're already writing twitlongers. Can you believe it? Reforge Gaming did it again, insisting that this game's an RPG, that it's not. I was just reading a YouTube description, so I hope you guys can forgive me. You walk through 105 degrees uphill to school. This is right. I'll keep the rule simple. If there's no dice, then it is not an RPG. Okay. I don't care where you're from. If it's over 80 degrees out, it's hot. Argue with your mama. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. As soon as you get into the 80s, it's like, it's hot. If it gets into the 90s, it's hot. I don't want to freaking hear about, like, yeah, well, where I'm from. Shut the frick up. It's hot out, bro. It's like, do you do that when someone burns their hand? You're like, oh my gosh, the stove's hot. And they're like, yeah, well, you still have your skin intact and you didn't, need skin grafts. So it's not really hot. You don't really know hot. I'd smack him. Was that hot? Was that hot? Like somebody's skin would be melting. They're standing on the surface of the sun. They're like, yeah, but this really isn't hot though. You should have been there for that summer when I was in Arizona. It's like, oh my gosh. Oh my. I don't know if I want to this is a quandary that I have with the whole, like, there are videos that I watch that I kind of want to react to with you guys. Especially like what I did with like the Ross thing. But the why Bethesda abandoned Starfield is like 18 minutes long. So that means that's going to turn into like a 40-minute video. Right? Just do it. Well, I question the wisdom of doing it in a public stream where the most loyal folks are here, because if we decide to use that later and publish it, this is the big dilemma I've always had with reaction content, right? It's like, so like what Zach does is brilliant. He does it on his Purple channel, and then it gets uploaded to his YouTube channel, and so you have very different audiences that consume. I mean, I'm on YouTube right now, so like I've always wondered, like, where do we? It adds value to that live audience, and I guess the upload audience on the channel, I would hope, is different enough that it would still be worth doing. Nobody wants to watch the same video twice. Yeah, that's the issue. Wait, why did he do this, though? I'm confused. Was something... what was supposed to happen here? There it all goes. That's all of it. I don't understand. What did he expect to happen? You're not on a vehicle. You just ran off a ramp. What was the plan? Yeah, like what did you think was going to happen there? Launch off? Even if he would have jumped, wouldn't that same thing have happened? He would have landed and everything would have busted. Look how high. Right? Look how high this is. Even if he would have successfully jumped, wouldn't the same thing have happened? When I was a teenager, I hurt myself by putting a poster up on my bedroom wall. What the... how did you do that? He didn't have the right equipment? What, oh, did he like change his loadout and thought he was going to be able to like do something? Could I get a too long didn't read for the day? I just popped in. The too long didn't read for the day is... go back and watch the intro? No, I'm just kidding. You can do that, by the way. Like, if I'm in the middle of a heated debate or something and you can't get my attention, you kind of want the too long didn't read. The show open is your too long didn't read. Too long didn't read is... there's an ongoing debate about Game Pass's profitability. Chris Dring qualified his comments, but it still seems as though Xbox doesn't actually include the cost of production of these big games in Game Pass. So calling it profitable is weird. And then the second story was Stop Killing Games is being lobbied against in Europe by an organization that did a pretty bad job arguing against what it's asking for. So we kind of looked at that. You get to land softly. You can jump off ramps all the time. How do you land softly? Because I've done that, and you don't land softly. What do you wear a particular legs to land softly? Because the legs I have right now are for speed or for combat. Is there something in Death Stranding 2 that lets you land softly or something? Grab stabilizers? I've got 2 of those on my backpack. Are there different ones that you can wear that help with that? Are they legs or are they something else? So the 2 that I have on my backpack, they will do that? I've jumped and kind of fallen far recently. I don't feel like they did that. Do you have to... are there bigger ones than the ones that I have? The ones that I have are just like... they look like little Discmans. They're like little like CD players on my back. They're not very large. Are there bigger versions that help with that? I don't commonly do what that guy did, and that's why. Like, you fall, and it's like, oh, gosh. Everything, yeah, you break everything. I stick to the trucks. I like to use the trucks. Ramps are different physics from falls? Really? I think in the first game, I always used a motorcycle off the ramps, and now I'm primarily using the trucks because they're giving me pretty big orders a lot of the time. So I just load up the truck, and I make sure I've got my my PCC so I can build charging stations if I need them. Oh, how it's supposed to go. All right, let me take a look at this. This is what he was trying to do. Okay. So what's doing that? What was doing that? Is it the stabilizers on his backpack or is it something on his legs? I've never done that. So the launch pad does it? Not any equipment that he's wearing? I've never done that in Death Stranding 1 or 2. I was always on the motorcycle, and then now I've been using the trucks. The trucks are too easy in this game compared to DS1. You also have to nail the jump. The launch ramp primarily. Huh. I'm going to have to try that. I did not know you could do that. I typically thought those were there for the vehicles, and so that's what I would use them for. And again, I was using my motorcycle almost exclusively in Death Stranding 1, and now I've been using the trucks a lot. And I know people probably, I actually think you could probably make an argument that the vehicles are almost too influential in DS2. Like, you can basically just be in a vehicle the whole time. You roll credits on Sunday. My problem now is I have review access to a game that I need to spend time in so we can create content with it. And the embargo lifts, I believe, on the 24th at midnight. So I have like a little over 2 weeks. It's going to really disrupt my ability to play Death Stranding 2. That's one of the biggest challenges I'm facing as a live streamer is I spend so much time live. It's really, really hard to like keep making time and progress in a game like Death Stranding 2, and then I get review access to something. And it's like, I don't know if I want to spend 2.5 weeks not playing Death Stranding 2. I don't know what to do. You haven't been able to play for a week? Ugh. It was showing what you were playing in Discord. I mean, yeah, it's not a secret. We're allowed to say. I can't talk about the game, obviously, but yeah, I got review access to Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, and the embargo is like 24 hours before the game comes out. Which I'm on record as saying that that's ideal for embargoes, to be at least a day or more before the game comes out. Hang on, I have to block this person. I keep getting added to some group message, some spam group message. The bots are just out of control. I enjoyed Death Stranding 1 more than 2. I thought Death Stranding 2 gets a little corny. You can ride a coffin too. I'm probably halfway through chapter 5. Yeah, I saw footage of people doing that, like surfing on a coffin. Yeah. Is it a PS5 and PC only game? No, Death Stranding 2 is PS5 only right now. Oh, are you asking about Wu Chang? I mean, Wu Chang's multiplat, is it not? Yeah, Wu Chang is PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. If you're asking about that, Death Stranding 2 is only on the PlayStation 5. Wu Chang is on all 3 platforms. You just got to saving a kangaroo, trying to establish my road infrastructure. Yeah, I did the road thing too much in the first game. I have no desire to do that this time. Like, I really enjoyed it in the first game, but I didn't understand how it worked a couple of times, and like I built roads that went the wrong way, and it like kind of frustrated me. Like, I thought I was building like this nice seamless road. And so I was like, okay, fine. So I went back and did more grinding, and I completed an entire road in that first area from top to, not first area, it's like the second area in Death Stranding 1. So from all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom, I had roads. I had a road. And I had no desire to do that this time around. Like right now, I'm more interested in the story and combat and playing it like an action game. So like I'm in shootouts. I'm stealthy, but then I want to get shots in. I love the shotgun. The game just feels really good. I think they built like an incredibly versatile game. It's so versatile. You can play super stealthy, super combat focused. You can play super traversal focused. Like if you don't want to use, the vehicles, there's a lot of things you can do to make traversal easier if you feel like climbing and walking everywhere. I think they've done a brilliant job with the game. There's a lot of spectrum, a lot of spectrum. I need Joey Swole to react to this and take it serious. Look at how fit these birds are and how they clearly are not skipping leg day. This is the gym culture we need. So this video... I need that in my life. I need it. I need this video to end, and I need Joey Swole to pop up and go, absolutely love this video. This is what we want to see in gym culture. Not only are these birds fit, but they are clearly not skipping leg day. Good for you. Get at it. Is that AI? I don't know. I need Joey Swole. I need it. I need that in my life, dude. I need him to totally keep a straight face and take it serious. You know what I'm saying? I need it. Oh, hang on. Absolutely love this video. I love that guy. I love that guy. Joey Swole's the best. Mind your business. Do better. He did that once too. Like I saw a video and I was like, I said that I was waiting for Joey Swole to pop up at the end and be like, absolutely love this video. This is the kind of gym culture that we need. Because it was a guy being goofy a girl was recording herself, you know, and he started working out, and his head was like popping in the frame and leaving, and popping in the frame and leaving. And I was like, I need Joey Swole to react to this. This is so funny because she didn't get mad at all. She laughed. She took it in stride, which is what you want to see. Like these people that are in the gyms that have like, main character syndrome in Overdrive. Yeah. I love when he roasts up people that pick on kids. I love that. Oh man. Take the frickin' bat to their face. I love it. Joey's getting people banned from gyms and stuff for that too. Like when they'll like mock people or like use them for content and stuff. Like he's gotten people banned from gyms. He's got pull. That dude's got pull. Yeah. The people that the one person got their account banned because they were using the Down syndrome filter. Yep. For their OnlyFans promos. Yeah, he got him banned. They got banned for that. Little dude was just chilling in his Scouts uniform, minding his own business. If there are two things that I think should get you instantly banned off of any of these content creation platforms, it should be when you mess with people while they're on the job and you farm them for content. You're basically harassing people working. And if you mess with kids, instant ban, no questions asked, not a warning, nothing. Zero tolerance policy. Maybe you get one warning and they take the video down. Maybe you get one warning and they say, listen, that is not tolerated on this platform. You will not farm children or people working for content. That's unacceptable. And if you do it again, nuke their content from orbit. Get them the frick off these platforms. It's toxic. It's terrible. You should not be able to monetize harassment. You shouldn't be. Honestly, it should be illegal. Like, it should be illegal. You shouldn't be. You're making money harassing people. Like, what the frick? Like, if I paid you money to go mess with somebody, they could press charges and sue and be like, what the huh? Like, it's like you're not hiring a hitman, but you kind of are. You know what I mean? That would be considered horrible if I did that. But it's fine if you pull out your own camera and then it goes viral and you make a ton of money on, YouTube or these various platforms. That should not be allowed at all. What's your hype level for the new Ghost game? I am actually trying to keep my hype levels down about Ghost of Yotei because I have high expectations. I really hope that I enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the first game. But I try not to get too hyped up about games. I anticipate it being one of my favorite games this year. Expedition 33 is currently my favorite game. I think Death Stranding 2 currently is behind it a little bit. It's behind it a little bit. We'll see if that changes. So we'll see if that changes. We'll see. They're so close. I mean, they are in the race. It's their neck and neck. But yeah. Currently, Expedition 33 is still in the lead for me. That's just me personally. It's still in the lead. So. I tell you what we'll do. We have some flexibility right now. Okay, we have some flexibility, but I do need to cut out time to play that game that I have review access to, so I can't overindulge here. But if we'll go to Green Room at 1 unless you guys extend. If you guys can get it to 300 and you guys get us ahead, I have no problem extending. I like to put the show in your hands, so I'll give you guys a little bit of time here. You guys have like 10 minutes to extend. So if you want to go on a little run, you want to boost the numbers and start gifting, start celebrating, start whatever, I will let you guys do that, and we'll just keep talking. We'll just keep vibing and looking at gaming news, and the Assassin's Creed Black Flag thing's pretty exciting. They could be gearing up for an announcement, very soon. I think Death Stranding 2 will progress more as the year goes on. Ogre Love My Pro. Yeah, Death Stranding 2 really, really shows off the pro. It really does. Just a, oh my gosh. Such a good looking game. And if that's kind of the beginning of what we expect to see from games that have really dug in deep into like what they can do with the PS5 base and the PS5 Pro, like from ground up. I think the second half of this gen is going to be freaking awesome. I think it's going to be awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. It's funny how people are freaking out about Helldivers, but yeah, we have Death Stranding 2 and Ghost coming this year as exclusives. Yeah, I mean, I obviously argued in my video. I think that people are overreacting. I don't think it's a threat. I don't think Xbox is a threat. I think PlayStation has made that very, very clear. I think they've made it clear that this is absolutely not a threat. They don't view Xbox as a threat anymore. I had some people. Let me read you one of the comments that I thought was pretty telling about the conversation. Okay. I'm going to hide his username because these losers will claim they're being targeted if you like read their comments. They'll be like, who targeted me? So this person says, Theory 1, Arrowhead was bullying Sony. Theory 2, Xbox was begging Sony. That's within the first 2 minutes. I don't need to watch the other 17. This right here is the conversation about Xbox for the last couple of years in a nutshell. This is it right here. This is a Cliff's Notes version of what it's been like to talk about Xbox for the last 2 years. Complete and utter bad faith, egregious misrepresentations of what I say, and then denouncement, and I'm not going to watch anything else that you make. I mean, this is it right here. This is the last 2 years condensed down into a thimble. Because I didn't say any of this. Like Arrowhead was bullying Sony. I never said that. I said that my theory was Arrowhead really wanted it to happen, so maybe they negotiated it. Maybe they said, hey, they've already publicly stated they want it to happen. They publicly stated that their next game will not be published by Sony, but they're open to working with Sony in the future. So maybe they leveraged it. Maybe they leveraged that in a negotiation and said, we would really like our game to be on Xbox. Second, Xbox was begging Sony. Again, that's not even remotely close to what I indicated. I indicated that a source that I trust told me Xbox initiated the conversation, which completely changes the landscape of the discussion. It's like, well, this was not something that PlayStation initiated on their own. This was not an idea that they came up with. This was something that Xbox initiated. That is not me saying they're begging. It's me saying they negotiated. I think that that's fair to say. That's what I was told. And then you don't watch the rest of the video. So I reply, wow, a complete misrepresentation of what I said. Not surprising at all, coming from the crowd that struggles with facts, evidence, and verifiable information. I've dealt with this for years now. It's like, this is what always happens. It's like we just grossly misrepresent what I say because you can't grapple with facts. It's too painful for you. I never said Arrowhead bullied Sony. Sounds like you watched a false frame clip somewhere. That's exactly what it sounds like to me. It's like you saw a clip somewhere where somebody said, oh, yeah, Reforge is coping and claimed that Arrowhead bullied Sony. Never said that, and that's a bad faith interpretation. Which, again, is not surprising. I said they clearly wanted it, as they publicly stated that, and they could have used it in negotiation. I've since admitted this theory was incorrect. Right? Second, I never said Xbox begged. I said Xbox initiated the conversation and somehow convinced PlayStation to do it. This comes from a source that I trust at Sony, who has provided me with solid info up to now. So sure, don't watch the rest of the video based on a false summary of things I've said, because I guess you are either too scared or too insecure to hear something that isn't cliche fanboy drivel like PlayStation third party full slate. Like, that's the stat. That's why it's like when people come in and start acting like that, it's like, what are you even doing? You're interacting with the figment of your imagination. Yeah, Reforge out here saying Arrowhead bullied Sony and Xbox begged Sony. And it's like, I never said those things. You're literally You are literally angry about somebody that doesn't exist and comments that don't exist. It's like, it's just utter delusion. Like, I feel like on a regular basis, I'm interacting with mental illness. It's like, this is delusion. I feel like I'm in a psych ward and I'm interacting with people who are seeing, you know, little blue Smurfs everywhere. And it's like, this is so exhausting. You're seeing stuff that isn't there. This is absolute delusion. I don't say the things you claim that I say. I don't hold the positions that people claim that I hold. It's like, this has been the experience this entire time. It's like the only way to interact with content that they don't agree with is to basically just create some mirage of content that they can then dismiss and say, well, this guy's an idiot and doesn't know what he was talking about. And it's like, some figment of your imagination is an idiot that doesn't know what he was talking about, because I never said those things. A 5-spot from Broken Earth. I do still want to push for mandating MN key binding for console games. I'd buy a console today. Hey, thanks for making it rain confetti, Broken Earth. I appreciate that. I don't think you should mandate mouse and keyboard, because some games, I think, have a right to say, we don't want that in our game. I don't think mandates should be in place for that. You made a well-written response, and that guy probably won't bother to read it. That's good. That's good. That's an indictment of his opinion. That's an indictment of his opinion. It's like, you're not going to watch the video and you're going to falsely summarize what I say. Okay, fine. I'll just put this nice, paragraph below that decimates your opinion, and you'll never reply to it because you know you can't. You know you can't. Directly quote the video to interact with what I say, or what you're saying is completely irrelevant. You're arguing against a shadow, something that's not even really there. It's like, that's why we say shadow boxing. It's like, to me, it's like, I enjoy dialoguing so much. I always look at that and I'm like, you're really missing out on something fun, which is disagreement rooted in what's actually stated, not like denouncement based on something that was never stated. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't know. I watch kids play on the regular, right? We're around my kiddos and other kiddos, and they commonly, and because they're immature and they're children, they commonly work against their own enjoyment because they bicker about things that don't matter, or they take offense at things that they should not be having their feelings hurt. Well, why? Well, because they're children. They're 9 years old, 6 years old. They're emotionally unstable. They haven't ascended to areas of like, oh, well, I can have disagreement and some friction with somebody and not get all flustered and upset. But in this realm, it's like, I feel like I'm commonly dealing with people who are just, they are ill-equipped to engage with differing opinions. So they're just like, well, I'm going to imagine you said a bunch of stupid things that you didn't say, so I can dismiss your video. I was like, okay. That's what I've been saying lately. I'm like, I mean, you're free to think that if that makes you feel better, but that, that's not what I said. So yeah, I did. Okay. I'm not going to watch your video because I'm imagining you said things you didn't say. And it's like, go for it. I guess. It makes you feel better. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that drop frames using the same expression I used in a couple of videos ago. Xbox. EX, as in it is the Xbox. Put it in Discord at the timestamp. 124:36. Yeah. The drop frames thing. Yeah, you sent this to me this morning. It's JP and Zeke.
He tweeted out, "Why is no one talking about the elephant in the room? Cough, cough," and then parenthesis Game Pass, which prompted a user to ask him, as a dev, what are your thoughts on Game Pass? And he responded, "I think Game Pass is an unsustainable model that has been increasingly damaging for the industry for a decade, subsidized by Microsoft's, quote, infinite money, end quote. But at some point, reality has to hit. I don't think Game Pass can coexist with other models. They'll either kill everyone else or give up." which my community was very quick to point out. Rami said that exact thing, kind of a different form, a couple of years ago on the show. So it seems like this is an ongoing, like collective thought amongst a lot of developers.
People have kind of been saying this since Game Pass came out.
Yeah.
I love that Ko immediately says that, because a lot of people have been saying this, and devs now feel more emboldened to talk about it. So when people are like, why do you care about this? Why do you care about this? It's like, for the same reason we care about the ABK acquisition not being additive to the market, because a lot of us have been talking about it since its inception as an idea. And so Game Pass has been a topic. It's central to the identity of Xbox the last decade. So of course we've been talking about it, and of course we're talking about it now. It's relevant.
Like, it was one of the biggest points of contention when it was first being released conceptually.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a huge issue. It absolutely is. And Raph is absolutely right. And honestly, like, what's interesting is we're seeing the ramification. We just did. I mean, look at this. Microsoft, with its wildly successful Game Pass, and everything's working so great, just fired 9,000 people. So clearly this is like, no, it's not sustainable at all. And it's working arguably as pretty much best as it could right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Well-made point. A well-made point by Ko to talk about the fact that it has been doing well, and it's growing, and it's the best it's ever been. So it's operating at capacity, like it's operating at what you would hope would be the best that it could. Like, it obviously could have more people, subscribe to it, which would then potentially make it more profitable. But this is the best you got, and apparently it's still not good enough.
yeah, he's nailed it.
Yep. And so this prompted Twitter user Cromwell, aka I forget. Code, do you know his full name?
For who?
For Crom over at Larian. Cromwell on Twitter.
I thought he renamed his name officially to Cromwell, his Twitter handle. Is that not?
Oh, okay. Well, that's his. Yeah, no, that's his thing.
That's all I've been known about.
He's one of the, yeah.
Cromwell.
He's one of the heads over at Larian, and he's
Very popular on Twitter.
Yeah, very outspoken as well. Anytime you've seen like Larian exec has comment or kind of gets looped in a lot with things Finn has said, because he's usually echoing a lot of what Finn has said.
And Crom has very consistently made it clear that they're not a big fan of Xbox, which is not surprising after what Phil Spencer did in his interview with Destin Legary at Gamescom, where he basically blamed Larian for the game coming to Xbox late. And then the next day, Larian was like, we're shipping the game to Xbox without parodies. The Series S will not be getting split screen. Ever since then, I think it's been very obvious there is tension there, and I said there would be. I said that was very unprofessional of Phil, and now I feel like people are way more emboldened to get out their guns from their holsters and to fire criticisms at Xbox, because it's clear that the industry itself is starting to turn on them. It is.
He jumped into the conversation and quit and said, what happens when all the money runs out? Question mark is the most vocal concern in my network, and one of the main economic reasons people I know haven't shifted to its business model. The infinite money thing never made any sense. Raphael responded, I agree. I'm fed up with all the BS they fed us at first. Like, don't worry, it doesn't impact the sales, only to admit years later that it totally does. No shit, it does.
Little summary there. So what they're referring to is Phil Spencer originally said, and he tried to debunk the notion that Game Pass would be cannibalistic to sales, arguing that it wasn't. He cited Forza Horizon and how it actually seems to have a causative relationship, as in word of mouth spread, and it increased the sales. Only 2 years later admit to the FTC that they have internally discovered that Game Pass is cannibalistic to sales. So again, when people are like, why are you talking about this? Why do you care? It's been a pretty significant conversation piece for years.
And then we had a bunch of other folk jump in. I don't think Game Pass was made to be profitable, sustainable in the short to the medium term. Microsoft is running a marathon. Game Pass was also instrumental in Microsoft's attempt at pushing streaming to the forefront of the market. Raphael responded and said, I agree, but it's a long game that involves throwing a tsunami at the entire ecosystem of the industry. Only the gamers like it because the offer is too good to be true, but eventually even gamers will hate it because they realize the effects on the games. I think that's where like our community is at the origin of right now, where they're starting to see like, oh, fuck, it is kind of affecting everyone else. I don't know.
It's a fantastic value.
Yeah,
I
think that narrative will always eclipse the other narrative that he mentioned, because you're right, it's insane.
Still a good value.
Right.
that was always the point that would come up anytime I discussed this, is people would argue that the value was so good, and it's like consumers shouldn't care because we're getting such a good deal. And my pushback was always, I'm not saying it's not a good value. I'm saying this will be destructive. I have videos and shorts on this channel out there floating around on TikTok as well, where I said this will be damaging because you are devaluing the very thing that we all love in order to make your platform and your brand more appealing. It is at the behest of the value of the items that it's using. Like, you're basically saying we're willing to devalue games to prop up and make Game Pass more valuable, to the point that internally they don't even crunch the numbers and count the cost of game development in the equation of Game Pass. So they're basically willing, as Zubair says in chat, as long as it gets games for free, it's going to be profitable. Yes, because when you crunch the numbers on a spreadsheet and the games coming to Game Pass in the Game Pass spreadsheet cost nothing, they cost $0. That's how they crunch the numbers. Of course it's always going to look profitable, and of course it's going to look amazing. And of course, it's going to be positioned to the consumer as if it's this amazing deal. But the irony is that it's not good for you if over time the devaluation of games and the decoupling of a game's value to a portfolio being connected to its profit and loss measurement and value measurement, when you decouple that, you basically end up with situations like you did with Hi-Fi Rush. And that is something you should be interested in as a consumer, because you're watching a game do well and get high praise and get high reviews and add great value to a subservice, but then the studio is expendable because their profit and loss has been decoupled with how well the game was received and distributed and sold because you put it on a subscription service.
Right.
So that's a problem.
Well, it sucks to know that the only way that it would be sustainable is if you got to a point where you plateau and stay there and be happy with that. You get to this number of
how it works.
I know that. But that's the shitty thing. Is if you want to sustain Game Pass, you have to. You're going to get to a point where the numbers don't go up anymore, and then you have to like stop paying as many people for their games to be a Game Pass, day one exclusive, stuff like that. It'll still be a fucking great deal for everyone that still pays for it, but there's only a finite amount of people who are going to ever buy Game Pass.
Yeah, I miss Zeke, because you get the impression from Zeke, like when you see him doing stuff and acting crazy in the clips and stuff, you get the impression that he's just kind of like this, this crazy guy. He's actually pretty smart, and you wouldn't know that. Like his persona can seem a little bit like chaotic and loony, but he's actually a sharp guy. Like, I hung out with him at E3 2019. We got to co-host some of the interviews, and we got to party and got to hang out. He's a good dude. But yeah, I think he's right. It's like eventually you're going to hit that finite amount of people that want to do it. And we saw evidence of this when they started raising the price of Ultimate, and they started, limiting where day and date went. So I think that's good enough of a clip. I don't know if we're going to ever use these quick reactions as content anywhere, but if we do and you're watching this video, make sure and hit subscribe and be here for those live discussions. All right, you guys got some extra time out of me. We didn't extend, but you got some extra time out of me. We're going to go to the green room. You guys over here on purple. Why do people not attack these guys? Well, because the people that attack me are cowards. Like, you're never going to attack somebody who is the size of Ko or It's Me JP or Zeke, because you're going to get a negative reaction. But they take it. Listen, the truth of the matter is a lot of people that farm me for content, they do it because they're cowards, and they know that most people aren't going to stand up for me given my history. I'm an easy target. Because I got turned into a pariah because of false claims in 2020, I'm an easy target. Nobody's going to come to the defense of somebody who went through what I went through, and they know that. So they're basically punching down, in a sense. It's very cheap and very cowardly to essentially punch down on somebody that I'm never going to fight back. It's not the kind of content that I make. So they know I'm never going to fight back. I'm never going to do a reaction video. I'm never going to do a response video. And they also know that the average person is not going to come to my defense because you're either somebody who just hangs out here and enjoys my content. But if you're a content creator, you do not want to make content defending Reforge Gaming. You're just not going to do it. Right? I mean, that's not something that people are going to do. Your audience is not the kind to roll over there and act like they do. Right, like you guys are not going to return in kind and like go over there and get involved in the muck and the mire. And so it's, again, I believe they're cowards. Like they basically punch down on somebody that they know will never punch back. And then they also know no one's ever going to defend this guy because of his history. Like, it's complete cowardice. It really, really is. I just don't have any respect for it. I don't. Because I don't play their game. I don't get involved in all of that, and they take full advantage of that, you know. All right, there's the link to Green Room in the chat. Hey, thanks so much for being a direct supporter of the content. If you are watching Green Room, it means you are Member Plus or VIP. If you're at the tail end of the public stream, consider upgrading. This has been something that we've been hammering on for like 2 years, and it really, we just don't get that response on YouTube. But I'm going to keep saying, if you like the content, it is fan-funded content, and those memberships are the way we do this. You guys that watch on Purple will eventually not be able to watch this without a sub, so chat is set to sub only. I'm going to end the previous stream and redirect folks over, and I'll change that thumbnail as well.